Okay. Gaveling us in at 5:31 p.m. on February 27th for the PGUSD's Board of Education regular meeting. So today we're going to start with obviously this call of order, and I will read the land acknowledgement. Good evening. As we begin this meeting, it's important to pay respect to and acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Ohlone, Costanoan, and Esselen people, and additionally pay respect to elders, both past and present. So with that, I think we will go into our roll call vote.
Absolutely. President Dr. Hazen.
I'm here.
Clerk McNary.
Here.
Trustee Otmar.
Here.
Trustee Shamas.
Here.
And Trustee Wax.
Here. Thank you so much. And so with that, we now have item D, which is the adoption of the agenda. So looking out in the room, is there any public comment on the agenda as presented? And we have one addition I think you were going to mention as well. Super.
Correct. Yes. The one walk-on item. What I'm proposing is that it'll be added to the consent agenda as item N for Nancy. And it really it's a ratification to the exciting news is our high school boys and girls basketball teams made it through to the playoffs. And that was a game that happened last Tuesday, which is why it's a ratification. It was, considered an out of county trip. So we're bringing it forward for ratification tonight. And my proposal would be that we really just name it, out of county activity for PGHS basketball team.
Okay, so that will be item N on consent. For now, if everyone agrees, is there anyone online or in the public that had any comments on this? Okay, none online. So now we can go to the board, if I'm right. Has any board concerns about the agenda as presented? Excellent. With that, I'll look for a motion if anyone would like to approve.
I'll make a motion with the addition of the walk-on ratification basketball item to
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion was made by Clerk McNary and seconded by Trustee Wax. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? If not, that passes 5-0. So now I will go ahead to item 2A, and I'm going to identify the closed session topics we'll be meeting about tonight. And these are going to be item 1 is negotiations, collective bargaining session, planning and prep with the PGTA for 24-25, Gov Code 3549.1. Then negotiations, collective bargaining session, planning and prep with the CSEA for 24-25, Government Code 3549.1. And then public employee discipline, dismissal, release, leave, complaint, Government Code 54957. So is there any public comment on these closed agenda items? Okay. With none, I will go ahead and adjourn us to closed session. Thank you, everyone. Okay, I'm bringing us back to order, and I will start item 3 here, reconvening an open session where I'll report action taken in closed session. And so on the first item, negotiations, collective bargaining session, planning and prep with PGTA for 24-25, Government Code 3549.1. Information was received and direction was given. And for the collective bargaining session, planning and preparation with CSEA for 24-25, Government Code 3549.1. Information was received, direction given. And then item 3, the public employee discipline, dismissal, release, leave, complaint, Government Code 54957. Information was received. And so with that, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. If I can, Trustee Powley, can I ask you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight? Thank you so much. And we're going to start with one of my favorite parts of the night, the communications from our student representative. Again, Trustee Powley, the mic is yours.
All right. So just a few things that have been going on at the high school and the community high school lately. First off, at the community high school, we recently had an update with the garden, which is really great. So now they can continue with planting more soil beds and just keep on doing work with their garden over there. And then this weekend and this past week, the culinary team at the high school actually went down to LA and had a competition and actually did really well there. And I think 3 of their teams placed in the top 5 out of 34 different teams that were there. And then this weekend, there's also a robotics competition that's coming up, which is really great. I think it's their first one of the year. So they've been working really hard with their robots and getting ready for that this weekend. And then just to recap, winter sports ended, and then our boys and girls basketball teams both made it to the quarterfinals for playoffs, but didn't move on. But it was great to watch all our winter sports teams compete this year. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we're now going to the board member comments and written communications. I think I'll just go ahead and start and head down that way. I received multiple emails this past week or two regarding the budget and concerns about it in the process. Request for student observation, an email about safety and vaping at the middle school and high school in particular, concerns about the middle school stage, an MCOE training opportunity for the board on the LCAP process, an email about DEI and kids, and an email thanking the district for the updated budget plans. And I'll also just start by thanking all of the parents, community members, and staff that were able to attend our recent town halls, including the most recent budget forum earlier this week. There was a story in the Monterey Now about that, and we had over 30 people, and it just really highlighted, even with this difficult time and subject, I'll be honest, I was preparing for a lot more acrimony, and it was a very above board and solid discussion with very good contributions from all. So I just want to, again, appreciate that because it is a very difficult time and subject for people. And I'll try to end here on a high note, just to give a quick shout out to those teachers that have gone the extra mile. Things like communicating with students and parents about assignments and activities going on, and those teachers and staff that have done the culture of we, reaching out to a student and just asking, how are they doing? How's everything going? Thanks for contributing to this culture of we. So with that, I'll hand it off to Clerk Mary.
Yeah, thank you. I also attended the community input forum on the budget. Thank you, staff, for putting that on. I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about that topic later, but thank you for those who attended both in person and then online. I think one thing I got to do as a PGMS parent is attend Mr. Roach's anti-bullying series that's going on once a month. This month's topic was cyberbullying and internet safety. It was available for parents online and in person. Some really great information, really great resources. One thing I took with me, and just reading this, I thought this website would probably be there forever, but now we're in a different, I don't know. It's called stopbullying.gov, and it has lots of tutorials, real life scenarios, resources for all different kinds of bullying for parents and anyone else. But I've found it to be a great resource even so far. And also, I imagine Superintendent Adamson is going to touch on this, but we have upcoming community forums on the master's facilities plan next week on Monday, March 3rd for staff, and then March 4th for the community. So I think that information is available on our website and probably via email. Is there any other place that people can find that info?
I think you named both of them, and I believe that a second follow-up email reminder went out this afternoon for everyone. So yes, but the website, the calendar is definitely the place to locate that.
Okay, thank you.
I did not receive any additional emails than what has been mentioned. And I don't have additional comment tonight. Thank you.
I'd just like to say that I enjoyed going to visit the different sites with Dr. Adamson on this week and Tuesday. We went to every site and at least met the principals and the office staff. And, it was quick, but it was a good little journey around the district and got a little bit of flavor from each site. So I appreciate that. Thank you for taking me.
Let's see, I didn't really receive any extra correspondence besides what Trustee Hazen and Trustee Powley mentioned. I would like to mention that if you have a free Saturday, or I guess Sunday, the Breaker Bots is streaming live. So that's cool. And then also, I forget the exact date right now. I didn't write it. I think it's March 13th or something, but there's a science fair at RHD So I appreciate, hearing about that, and I'm excited to go. And also, the one correspondence that I did get was just a notice about the PG Pride's Taste of PG event, their discounted tickets, which benefits our school district, is for one more day, and that happens March 30th at Spanish Bay. And then related to Trustee Palley's culinary update, there's an article in the Monterey Now about them too, but they also gave us food last month, and it was very delicious. So I appreciate that. And congrats to the b-ball teams. A team in California got Luca, and maybe next time everyone could get Luca. I don't know. I'm also reading through a book. My wife is in the process of writing it. And in it, she talks about the history of ACT UP, the movement to bring greater awareness to the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and 90s. And their motto was silence equals death. And so for like the past couple of days, while I'm making comments, that has hung with me. And so I'd just like to call attention to a couple more things that are going on. In West Texas, the first death by a child from a measles outbreak has occurred. And in that particular county, in that region, let's see, there are over 20 kids, I guess, in the hospital right now. And this kind of goes in line with decreased vaccination rates. Right now, basically, a number of children reached an all-time high requesting vaccine exemptions. In 2023, that exemption was 3%. But in Gaines County, Texas, where the measles outbreak is, it's nearly 18%. So I think as we are judging the health of our country and our city and our society, we have to keep in mind that sometimes actions don't affect just you. It's sort of like if you drove in the wrong way in traffic, that is definitely your choice, but there are very real consequences for everyone else. And similarly, or in line, the FDA just canceled their meeting with WHO to review the flu vaccine strains that they want to create a vaccine for next year, which has been standard. This puts a lot of people at risk, obviously. This also follows on the heels of President Trump issuing an executive order to begin the process of withdrawing the U.S. from the WHO, the World Health Organization. And again, I think this is leading us to a path of new dark ages. We are willingly and without reason scapegoating expertise, science, and facts. It is the same line of reckless behavior that has led the president to declare that Ukraine should have never started the war, which is not true. Russia's army invaded Ukraine on February 24th, 2022. I am also a skeptic. I like challenging people, especially my wife and Mike Gibbs. But I also like the idea of progress and moving forward. And so when baseless conjecture, misinformation, and disinformation spread, it takes an enormous amount of effort and time to correct the matter. I think oftentimes it comes from a good place of wondering, but from people in higher levels of office, I think they are also diversionary tactics and a blockade to accomplishing better things. I am one of the million of Americans who believe the government, from this district office, which we'll be talking about tonight, to the state, to the federal budget, can be more efficient and cut spending. In my short time here, I have certainly annoyed district staff with a litany of questions, ideas, and tangents, but I am also somewhat humble enough to know that I don't know much about how this district works. I am learning, I am curious, I am motivated to leave the district in a better place when my term ends than where it started. But I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional educator like so many people in the audience, and I do not have years and years of experience in managing education like the fine people at our district office. So my role is in contrast to our country having an unelected billionaire who has received more than $38 billion in government contracts, loans, subsidies, and tax credits, take a chainsaw to everything in the budget without understanding carrying various programs' purpose or benefit. I think it's incredibly reckless and damaging to the country in a actually existential way. We are full speed ahead down a path that gatekeeps data, games the system for short-term profits, lays waste to our international influence, worships wealth, and has absolutely no moral conviction or backbone. There will be some in the community who think these comments are not germane to my role or the work of our district, but we have a culture of we with belonging, safety, and prosperity as our goals. If our federal government lionizes exclusion, increases volatility, and enriches only a few, it makes it almost impossible to succeed in our goals. So for our kids and the health of our community, I will continue to influence and put focus on the matters closest to us, literally, geographically, and represent our own values as best as I can in my own small way, whether that's by asking annoying questions about budgets, approving overnight field trip requests, or calling attention to our high school's awesome culinary team. And I hope we all do, because silence equals death.
Thank you very much for those comments, everyone. And now we're on to item C here, our superintendent report.
Thank you so much. They are not annoying questions, is all I'm going to say, Trustee Wax. You're curious and you're learning, and we appreciate that. So thank you.
If I could
Role is important.
just interject, if anyone wanted to go to the STEM night at Robert Down, it is March. Oh, I have it. It's the 13th from 5 to 7 in the cafeteria.
Thank you for that, Trustee Ahmar. All right, so I think a lot going on. I think I'm trying to focus this a little on this past week as far as site visits, but we talk about our culture of we, and it is alive and well as I, visit and see so much of what our students are getting to engage in. I think a lot has mentioned already, which is so wonderful, and even from our student representative, William Powley. But when I think of Robert Down, just recently this week, I was able to this morning visit their Heritage Club. ELD teacher, Mrs. Williams. This is something she started this year to really tie in with our culture of we. I got to go and actually watch Principal Brownfield this morning to see a little of what she was presenting to the club. And I've been invited to do the same next month. So thank you, Principal Brownfield, for giving me some ideas on how that's going to be done. But how wonderful this, students have voluntarily joined this club. They take part of their lunchtime to do so. And each of them are having that opportunity to share a little about their culture. So it's been wonderful. Culture of we, for sure. Forest Grove, I got to visit right before the break, their Rainbow Connections, Everyone Belongs lunchtime event as they were preparing for their Wear Pink Kindness Day. And so again, just to see that alive and well, once again, taking part of their lunchtime to participate in just, such engaging activities. They've also are looking forward to an assembly next week in celebration of Black History Month from our own Derek Williams. So looking forward to hearing more about that. Let's see, Wear Pink Day is alive and well, and that is happening at the middle school tomorrow. And I was there today. I actually got my pink bandana and pink beads. So we'll be wearing that proudly, as does the board. Oh, you've got your pink beads on. I love it. Right. Well, what a great opportunity for us to just remember the importance of kindness, right? It's such a simple gesture, but how powerful when we all come together to demonstrate that random act. So thank you to our sites for just taking the time to acknowledge that and draw attention to it. PG High School, so lots of excitement has been talked about. Our culinary team, who actually will be hopefully at some point in the next few weeks here to present a little on their experience in LA this week. So we're so proud of them. Our PG High School basketball teams, I was able to attend both the boys and the girls games last Saturday night. It was electric. That energy in the gym was just amazing. But what stood out to me is that both teams won. They got to advance to the final. Well, I think it was the championships this last Tuesday, and unfortunately, yes, they didn't make it through. But the fact that they got so far, so proud of them. Our sportsmanship was beyond. And I'm going to embarrass, our student rep here to the left of me. you had injured your knee earlier this year, so weren't able to play on the team, but you were there along with other of your members, just cheering your team on, and to see that sportsmanship in action was just unbelievable. What you were able to do for your team members, William, was remarkable. So good for you for, just really sort of being almost like a team captain through that. And then for the girls, there was one incident where, one of our students on the other team had injured her ankle, and one of our team members stopped to help, while the game's going on, and, help her sort of limp across the court. And again, just to see that in action. We talk about kindness, we talk about sportsmanship. So proud of our students, but they did so well. Equally proud of our middle school students, basketball as well. They made it through to the championships. They placed second, but wow, right? Just to see this occurring on every level. Culture of our students getting to just show, their strength in so many different ways and areas. Let's see, community high school. I was, so privileged to be able to spend some time with them yesterday. One of our students, it was his last day as he was graduating. And every time I get to visit that school and get to spend some time with those students and our staff there, it's just that strong reminder of the value that program brings. I mean, those are students who otherwise, without that program, I don't, think they would have that opportunity for the graduation to really be able to benefit from the smaller class environment. And it just reminds me constantly how, proud I am and how fortunate we are to have such a program. So again, just thank you to the staff and to Principal O'Meara for, just creating that environment. Our preschool inclusion program, got to read to them, a few days earlier. And again, just what a beautiful opportunity to see our youngest learners, right? Just learning and the engagement that's available to them. And then our Independent Pathways program at the adult school, I got to visit a little earlier this week, actually, with Trustee Shamaz as part of that introduction. And they were so excited about a visit they've got coming up next week to Selena's coffee shop, which is going to help prepare them for the mobile coffee shop that they're going to be putting into action. So again, thanks to Principal Martinez and Assistant Principal Arps for just providing that opportunity. I believe, in the near future, we're going to maybe see that coffee shop here at a future board meeting. So we're looking forward to that. There's so many opportunities for our students, and it's just wonderful to see it in action. I would like to acknowledge one of our very own teachers, our librarian at Robert Down, thanks to Principal Brownfield, was recently recognized for the Lighthouse Award for Literacy recognition. And that occurred last night, and I got to see some, great photos from that. But what a wonderful opportunity to recognize someone who has just spent her life pouring into our students to really just nurture that love of literacy. And so, we'll have that opportunity to, read a little bit more in my upcoming newsletter on her. But congratulations to Mrs. Scanlon. Our budget input over the past, few weeks, I really just we're going to be talking about this, later on this evening. But really what I want to just acknowledge is just the thanks to our community members, our families, our students, our staff for taking the time to give your feedback via surveys, via emails, via conversations. We had our community forum on Tuesday evening, and just the value of the feedback and input you've been able to share and present is invaluable. So, we appreciate that. And as I said, we'll be talking more about that this evening. I know that it was very well attended, as President Hazen mentioned already. We had 30 people in person and up to 50 people, a little over 50 people online. I understand there was a little bit of a challenge for some to access the link initially, and so our apologies for that. But I know that once we were able to get that out again, it wasn't in the email that went out. It was on the calendar invite. Just another reminder for us in our future communications to be sure we've got it, visible and accessible in both locations. Let's see. And, yes, as Trustee, as Clerk McNary mentioned already, that March is Community Engagement Month. We have a lot of things coming up. So Monday and Tuesday of next week, if you're able, we have the evening event on the 3rd. Monday evening is for our staff from 6 to 7:30 at the high school. The morning of March 4th, from 9 to 10:30, will be at the high school as well for all community members. And then we have an evening event that night, which I believe is here in the boardroom, from 6 to 7:30. And so if you're able, please join us. That is specifically for, we're gathering input for our master facilities plan to identify what our priorities are going to be for that plan. And as you'll recall, our, community very generously and unanimously and in many degrees, almost 72% of our community voted for Measure B. And so this is our ability to get the input from you as a community on how we want to see those funds spent. So we look forward to hearing from you. Don't despair if you're not able to attend the community forum. There will be a survey that goes out to our entire community and staff the day after, and that will be open for a period of time to make sure we get everyone's voices included. We'll also be having LCAP engagement community events as well. That'll be forthcoming, so be on the lookout for that. And then just, I want to end with just gratitude to, everyone here this evening. I know you're here very likely to hear more about, our budget proposal and continued conversations, but just that reminder of how we, during these times come together to, really look for solutions when, particularly during those challenging times. And you've shown that strength and that collaboration more than ever these past few weeks. My final comment, it is one of our principal's birthdays. I'm going to embarrass her, but happy birthday to Principal Arbrun today, officially. Yes, a round of applause. Hope it was a wonderful day.
And we have the safety report. Do we have that tonight as well, or?
There is really nothing to update at this time. And so, yeah, nothing to report.
Excellent.
Can I ask a question on just kind of relating it to the safety report and what you just said, Dr. Adamson, about the meeting that's going to be at the high school library? So are you saying that that's during the day, right? So would people need to check in at the office before they go to the library? Because
the morning is the district office.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mixed them up.
the mornings at
Thank you,
the district
'cause
office. The
You were
evening.
paying attention.
For the mic,
That was part of my plan, right? To see who was listening.
And for those who want to participate remotely, there's a Zoom link for the staff meeting and the community input session. that's
Absolutely. For
available.
each of those 3 sessions, you can do it virtually as well.
So now we're on to item 5. This is for individuals to address the board on non-agenda items. And I'm going to read and add a little bit on to the end based on some incorrect instruction I gave last time. So I'll start with our standard statement. The public comments on any item of interest to the public that is within the board's jurisdiction will be heard. The board will also take public comments on each specific action item prior to board action on each item. And any individual wishing to comment on a specific item on the current agenda are kindly asked to wait until that item is being discussed. The board will allow a reasonable amount of time for public comment on each agenda item, not to exceed 3 minutes per speaker and no more than 20 minutes per agenda item without board approval pursuant to board policy 9323. Speakers will be called sequentially until there is no speaker coming forward on the agenda item or the amount of time allocated for the agenda item has elapsed, whichever comes first. This meeting of the Board of Education is a business meeting of the board conducted in public, so please note the Brown Act limits the board's ability to respond to public comment. The board may choose to direct items to the administration for action or place an item on future agenda. And I'll just note at the last meeting, I was suggesting we use finger clicking or snapping instead of applause, whether in support or disagreement, but with some discussions and just some thought, I want to just take a moment to emphasize our commitment to fostering a safe, respectful, and inclusive space where every voice is heard and valued. So by doing that, we leave our neutral viewpoint and might make some people less likely to get up and speak. So we want to make sure that everyone feels safe and confident in sharing their perspectives. So please try to hold that, whether it's comments or for during board conducting its business. I have no problem and encourage for awards and recognition like we did, but just when we're dealing with decisions, it can potentially limit public comment. So with that, I will go ahead and open it up to community members that would like to comment on non-agenda items. Okay, we've got one in the room, Mr. Gibbs.
I attended the meeting earlier this week, and there were a lot of interesting stuff, but one of the comments from the audience, I believe it was past board chair started a speculation on enrollment. And is it up or is it down? It's down. Everybody knows that by now. And then the discussion was, well, why is it down? Or people didn't come back after COVID. It kind of topped out a little bit before COVID, actually, if you look at the numbers. So then the thought came up, well, did the kids get sucked up into space by Martians or what happened? Are they going to private school? Well, I can say pretty sure homeschooling in this area is up. It's up pretty significantly. Private schools, I don't know. So I called a couple today and talked to Stevenson, for example. Everybody knows Stevenson. And their number of applications is down just a tad, but they're still only taking 1 out of every 4 applications. Now, that doesn't mean they accept them all or all the parents decide to go there, but they will be full this fall. I know that from a personal perspective. Obviously, a lot more expensive as a boarding process. But when I look around the room and I would say, well, they got good teachers. Do we have good teachers here? Yeah. Well, come on. Yes, thank you very much. So I don't know if it's the teachers. I don't know if it's the staff. I think you could probably look at pay. Pay is probably equivalent. Benefits here, pension here is probably a lot better than it is at Stevenson, to tell you the truth. So I guess what I'm saying is that all public schools, like one of my grandkids goes to Oakland Public Schools. She's had 2 schools closed underneath her, and she's in her 3rd public school, not to her choice. Right? They have excess teachers. San Francisco is going to have about 400 extra staff, a lot of teachers out there. So I guess what I'm here to say is, what differentiates Pacific Grove Unified School District from anybody else, whether it's homeschooling, another private school, another public school or private school? And I think you need to think hard about what differentiates you. What do you have to offer to get kids here, to get parents here, and keep them here? And where can you find, you're going to talk about money a little bit later, but for example, President Martinez is here. You have a really great adult school. I think it's underused. I'm not sure it's undersourced. I don't know about that, but that could be boosted. And I could see 2 or 3 times the revenue or income from that. It's a great asset to the city and the local area. Why aren't we using it more? So I have more thoughts about that later, but I guess my message is, why are you different? People have a choice. You have customers, and I don't think they're very happy. I don't think they are. Got great staff, got good management. I think you can do a lot better. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else, please approach the mic. We have one more in the room. Any online, Louis? Okay, so why don't we go to online real quick, if that's okay, if you don't mind waiting just to do the back and forth.
You can do an online first, go ahead.
Miss Daniels, I think it's you.
Hi, thank you. Yeah. So I went to the meeting as well, and I heard that comment as well, that and part of it was that enrollment was down everywhere, which is true in a lot of places, but not Monterey. I mean, Monterey is bursting at the seams, and I actually wanted my kid to go to Monterey, but we can't even get in because a lot of the students from PG have already transferred over and they're not taking anymore. So it's not true that, there's certain schools who are doing really well right now. And, I have a lot of friends who, wanted to take their kids out of PG because their students were getting bullied at school, and there was no accountability. And so they just got tired of dealing with the problems here. But then also, it's just the teachers here, a lot of them don't know how to disaggregate their curriculums for students with disabilities. And that's a really big issue. And I think that there could be more training on that. So, yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much for your comments. And now we'll come back in person, and then it looks like we have one more online afterwards too. Go ahead. You're up.
Hi, I don't usually attend these meetings, but I don't know. I'm speaking. You can hear me probably clearly. I'm only a few inches away from the microphone. I noticed most of you were a foot or more away, and I did have difficulty hearing and understanding what many of you were saying. So I would ask, as someone who does have a slight hearing impairment, that you get a little closer to your microphone. Maybe you can hear me better because I'm a little closer, as opposed to standing back here like most of you are doing. So I want to thank Mr. Gibbs for pointing out something that inspired me. I know several people in Pacific Grove that have school-aged children that either homeschool by choice or send their students to York or Stevenson or whatever Catholic school because they find objection to some of the material of a non-academic nature that's taught in Pacific Grove schools. So I want to point that out to you. You might make yourself more likable, more competitive, and appeal to people to send their students here to feel confident. And the woman who just spoke talked about bullying. I hadn't even heard about that. So maybe that needs to be addressed. People would feel safer. You'd have greater numbers of students and more state income. I want to thank Board Member Wax for reviewing, summarizing what I already heard this morning on NPR Morning Edition. And I don't know what your protocol is here, but I don't know if it's in your general procedure to allow verbiage on non-school related items because he personally chooses to think it's important. I already heard all of those items this morning on Morning Edition. I don't know if any of you listened to that, but I did, and it was a nice summary. Thank you so much. It was a waste of time, though, I think, because I don't think it directly related to school. So anyway, that's all I want to share with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. And I think we have someone else online. So nope, they're going to put their hand down. Okay, last chance. If not, we will go on to our PGUSD staff comments. If there's anyone either in the room or online. We've got one in person. Thank you so much for coming up.
I wasn't going to come up, but I think that especially now in these trying times, that human kindness goes a long ways, and we need to be respectful, even if we don't have the same opinion as someone else. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. It looks like we have the person back online. I don't know if this is staff or public comment. If we can go back if we miss them for public comment or not.
I'm sorry, I'm new at this. This is Chris James. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay,
Thank you.
hi. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to everybody for all the events that you guys are inviting us to be part of as a community. I think it's very important, and I'm very happy to see people online and in person. That's great. I am the PGMS PTSA president, and I would like to just have a little bit more of a platform during these meetings for the PTA and the things that we are doing, because we are struggling a lot with volunteers, and we need new volunteers, those new families that are coming to Robert Down and to Forest Grove. So I don't know how to send like a memo to everybody about what's happening in our schools. And I think if we have that opportunity, that would be amazing. And that's all.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your comments. I'll just suggest that maybe that's a good one for staff to follow up to make sure we're getting that word out. So any other PGUSD staff comments real quick before? Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 6, our consent agenda. We have items A through N now with the addition at the beginning of the meeting, and want to give an opportunity for first the public to make a comment on consent. Not on room, not online. Now out to the board. I'll go ahead and just see if there's any nods. Anyone? Okay. Trustee Wax.
Yes, I just wanted to let people know related to a couple of the items that are to restate that the adult education budget is separately funded than the general fund. And then regarding the Otis elevator contract, Mr. Anderson did request other bids last year, but this was the only bid that came back, basically. Yeah, small area, limited providers, but in the future, I guess I would like to see multiple bids if possible.
Any other board comments? If not, I will go ahead and make a motion to accept the consent agenda items A through N as presented.
I'll second.
So that motion was made by myself and was seconded by trustee Shamas. All in favor, student vote. I remembered it.
Aye.
Excellent. Now, all in favor for the less important parts of the board?
Aye.
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 It passes 5-0. So now we're on to a special information discussion item. Item A, the staff recommendations for reductions, and I think this is going to be presented by Superintendent Adamson and Chief Rogan.
Right, well, thank you very much. I'm just going to take a moment to wait for those slides to come up. And I feel like that we've done this presentation a few times now, and so I feel so fortunate that we, had that opportunity to do this Tuesday night going into Thursday. Those of you who are present, I think the questions that came up, afterwards, the discussion that occurred as a result, really allowed us to make a few little revisions to what we're presenting this evening and sort of weave some of that information in. So again, we're so thankful for that, and thankful for this opportunity to be able to, review, what we'll be presenting this evening. So looking at the next slide, I really just want to use this as an opportunity to sort of just set the foundation and the stage for, what we'll be talking about this evening. I'm going to take us back to a few weeks ago at our February 6th meeting. We had brought forward our initial proposal for our reductions that we are looking at as ultimately to address our current deficit spending. That evening, we heard input from the board. We heard from our community and our staff that evening, and really, as we listened to the board specific to the priorities that you identified through that feedback process, it was very clear that you were requesting from us to go back and look and come back this evening to present alternative and additional options, which is what we will be doing shortly. I think as we listened to the feedback and listened to the board, a priority you had identified was to really consider a proposal that had the least possible impact to students and programs, to provide more information and details on the approach that we followed. And so, really what we have put forward and included in the packet this evening and included in this presentation is a lot of that background information on, steps we've taken, over the last few months. And ultimately, what was very clear, you were really looking for us, and I think there's a consensus there to seek long-term solutions, right? I think what we're looking at right now is, yes, we know we have to address the deficit currently that's been building, over the past few years, but we also want to put ourselves in a situation that's going to set us up for success in the future years. So we're not having to repeat this process and be here at the same place, this time next year. So on the right, you'll see, just how that guidance that we received has been applied. What we're bringing forward tonight is, as I mentioned, a revised reduction plan that reflects those board priorities, really with that, first one being, ready to look at focusing on a minimal impact to students. The support documentation we're providing, really it's about telling the story of, how we, number one, got to this point, why we're here, in a situation of deficit spending, but also, what we did through that process of identifying those reductions. We have definitely, since that February 6th meeting, a survey has gone out to our entire community. We had a lot of input on that, a total of 242 responses, which I'll be sharing a little of later on this evening. We have had a community forum earlier this week. Email, people have shared their input via email discussions, and so we really feel that we've got a good sense of, where the community and where our staff is as we move forward. And ultimately, we're looking at, a combination of short and long-term solutions, right? This is a one-time reduction plan we're bringing forward this evening to address the current deficit, as I said, that, will ultimately set us up for success moving into the future. So moving on to the next slide, and that's exactly what it is, right? We're looking at where we are now and where we see ourselves in the coming years. So the way I like to look at it is as we're presenting this reduction proposal, it's really about, it speaks to what we know now, what we know currently, and really about taking into account what we currently can control. As far as future planning, you will see, what we're presenting this evening is our initial reduction plan, but we are going to also be sharing, through our budget development process that we're currently in active development through that process over the next 2 months. We will be identifying additional areas for savings, which we will share a little with all of you towards the end of the presentation. So the next slide, this was something that we added since our presentation on Tuesday night, because, what we really realized is, through the questions that came forward, we wanted to be able to give sort of an overview of what our current budget looks like and sort of give sort of a summarized sort of snapshot, for everyone to get a sense of. So overall, if we're looking at our 24-25 budget, it is just a little under 50 million, so $49 million. The breakdown of that is really what I think is, what people want to know. As a basic aid district, a total of 40 million of our total budget comes from property taxes, and that's essentially what that means. As a basic aid district, we are community funded, and so that makes us a little different from some of our other districts within the county of Monterey. And what that does amount to, it's about 82% of our income comes directly from property taxes, and the reason for that is we receive more from property taxes than we would through the state's current funding formula. When the remaining amount, that makes up that 49 million, we receive our revenue from federal sources, from state, and from local sources. And just to give you an idea, so, what does that mean? For federal, some examples of that would be our Title I spending, special education funds that we receive, and nutritional services for our student nutritional programs. Under the category of state revenue, that would be things along the lines of our grants, specifically our categorical grants, and again, some special educational funding that we receive. And then local revenue really refers to things along the lines of facility rentals and any local grants and donations that we receive. Below that, but that's really an important piece, I think, for everyone to know. This was presented at our February 6th meeting, that currently our deficit through our unrestricted general fund is $868,148. The restricted fund deficit is $2 million, a little over $2 million. So what we're looking at is a total deficit of just under $3 million. When we're talking tonight about the reductions we're proposing, we are focusing specifically on our unrestricted general fund deficit. And the reason for that is unrestricted funds, we're able to reallocate them to other expenses, versus restricted funds, those are considered categorical, and we receive those from the state and it's state and federal sources. They are very specific towards specific expenditures, so we don't have that ability to reallocate them. So again, our focus is on that 868,000 or so deficit. On the right, we really just wanted to, give an idea of the funds that we received post-pandemic, specifically for emergency learning funds that were given to districts, across the state, but with that specific intention of addressing the needs of our students and staff as we returned post-pandemic. And so really you're looking at it was, a little under $5 million. Sorry, it's actually, $5 million. Through a combination of federal and state funds. Our focus there this evening is really going to be about the funding that was used from that one-time emergency source that we received, in which we hired additional staffing. And so when we talk about the emergency funds, the additional hires that occurred as a result of that, with that funding now coming to an end, we now have those positions which we are forced to make decisions on. If we're going to keep those positions and we identify that as a priority, we absolutely need to now identify alternative sources of funding in order to continue that, because this funding is no longer going to be there. All right, so the next slide before we go into the actual plan that we'll be presenting is really just a summary of some of the things we took into consideration as we developed this proposed spending reduction plan. The first point I've made already, that we are focused specifically on the unrestricted general fund. And the question has come up, why are we in this position currently? Why are we facing a deficit? And really it's a combination of a variety of things. But I think the two, most critical and important pieces are the one is, yes, the loss of one-time federal funding and state funding, emergency funding that we use to hire our mental health therapists and additional teachers such as our intervention teacher to help close the learning gaps that existed that we saw increased, post-pandemic. So we now have those positions with the funding no longer there. We're having to make those decisions on how we can continue to fund them. And then the additional piece of that is, I'm very proud to be part of a district in which we have absolutely really focused on and prioritizing an environment in which we have been able to recruit and retain quality educators. And that talks about our teaching staff, our certificated staff, our classified staff, our managers. And what that does mean that, yes, in order to remain competitive is ready to be able to compensate our employees at a competitive rate. And what that has resulted in is, compensation raises over the years as well. And, with that, yes, that obviously takes a toll on our overarching overall spending. So again, those two pieces are things we just need to take into consideration as we're making these decisions. I want to point out that the staffing component, is really the only deadline we have currently tonight, that for any layoffs that we are going to be making, we have to make those decisions by March 16th. And so March 15th. And so really when the impact on staffing right now, there's that deadline. But like I said, that the budget development process will continue over the next few months. We can continue to identify, and we will be continuing to identify additional areas where we can realize additional savings. The concept of balancing community input with fiscal realities, we got a lot of ideas through the input that we received, and there were some really good ones that, we were already working on. There were others that gave us ideas on things we can consider in the coming weeks. But there were also some ideas that really we realized that, are really not feasible. And so, really what I want everyone to know is that, we took that input, we've, taken the time to really be intentional and thoughtful about what can be, utilized. But there are some ideas that, really can't be. One idea that came out, it was actually the top idea that was mentioned by, many who gave feedback on areas we can bring in additional revenue was, well, let's open up our borders, to increase our enrollment to other students in other districts. But again, as a basic aid district, that's not really feasible because those students would be coming from other districts without the applicable funding. So, essentially as a basic aid district, we need to accept and enroll only the students who live within our residential boundaries, for those very specific reasons. That whole concept of declining enrollment, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as well. Declining enrollment doesn't mean declining funding, right? So, even if our enrollment drops a little bit, we still maintain the same amount of revenue that we're bringing in. What that does is really just allow us to spend a little bit more funding on the students that we have, right? So I think that concept of bringing in additional students who do not live within our boundaries, I think everyone needs to realize that we're now spending more and bringing down the per student rate. And so I just put that out there, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that later on. Our board director priorities were obviously an absolute consideration. Alignment with our district's local control accountability plan. That is our 3-year plan that we as a district are required to put together. We spent a lot of time last year gathering input to identify our 4 current goals, which we have identified as a district are priorities. And so we didn't want to reduce in areas that were obviously areas of strength and areas we've identified, as one of importance based on our 3-year plan. So definitely took that into consideration. Long-term planning, right? I've said it already. It's not about right now or next year. This is, the 5-10-year long-term plan from here. Equal consideration of all positions, roles, and departments. And that was definitely something we took into account. Definitely that came through with the feedback that we received. So we were very thoughtful and intentional as we identified the reduction plan. And at each reduction that we are looking at and proposing, we took, time to consider the implications to our students. And if there was a reduction in services, that our plan really considers that and make sure that we can continue those services for our students in perhaps another way. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Wogerman, who's going to talk to us a little bit now about the specific plan that we're proposing.
Dr. Adamson, thank you so much. It is my pleasure to sit here and talk a little bit about the plan for our meeting here tonight and juxtapose that with the plan that we brought forward on February 6th. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. On February 6th, we talked about 6.0 FTE equivalent to teaching positions. And February 27th, we are reducing that to 4.0 full-time equivalent reduction. You will see that the current plan, we're looking at keeping our Spanish and digital learning programs while still looking at a reduction of 4.0 FTE. That 4.0 FTE reduction is still going to keep class sizes at the contractual goals. We're not going to be pushing to the class size maximums. Just to give you some idea of what that is, for kindergarten through second grade, the goal is 25 students per class. The maximum would be 28. In grades 3 through 5, the goal is 27 per students per class, and the maximum is 29. We're also looking at continuing moving forward with a 0.60 full-time equivalent reduction at the middle school, which basically equates to 3 sections. And also a reclassification of a person who's currently a principal on special assignment to assistant principal at the high school. We're also looking at reducing the amount of reduction that we talked about with the elementary instructional assistants. We had on February 6th proposed a reduction of 1.70 in instructional assistants, which would have resulted in $80,000 worth of savings. And tonight, after hearing the feedback that we got from the board, as well as the commentary from the public, we have limited that to 0.375 full-time equivalent, which is a current vacancy that we have. So the current services that we have with regard to our elementary instructional assistants would remain unchanged. We just would not be filling that 0.375 vacancy that we have. We still are looking at a reduction of 3 MHTs on February 6th. We talked about bringing back 2 of them. Tonight, we have a proposal that will be able to bring back 3 of them without creating an impact on the unrestricted general fund. And I'll talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. And we're also looking at no reduction of the district office staff on February 6th, whereas tonight we are recommending a rollback of a human resources personnel specialist from a 12-month assignment to 10.5 months and going from 8 hours to 7.5. Next slide. Here, we want to talk a little bit about the mental health therapist because we know that that service is an important one to the district. When we came here on February 6th, we came with a plan that would be able to retain 2 of those positions. And what we were going to do was use the funding that is currently being allocated to pay for a contract with Monterey County Behavioral Health that was equivalent to hiring 2 of the mental health therapists back into the district. What we heard from the board and also from the public was that we didn't feel that 2 was going to be sufficient to address the needs of the students in our district. And so what we're looking at is funding a 3rd mental health therapist position using one-time money from a music, arts, and discretionary fund. That music, arts, discretionary grant was about $1 million grant that we received 3 years ago. And much of that has been encumbered and been spent funding music, arts, and some physical education and sports purchases, as well as other discretionary actions that we've taken with that, such as using some funds to offset the STRS and PERS increase that the district sees. We do still have funding that is sufficient for 1 year when the fund runs out to fund that 3rd mental health professional. I think it's important here to talk about how these 3 mental health therapists would address the special education services that the district currently contracts out for. Last time we talked about spreading those services across 2 mental health therapists. Now we would add a 3rd mental health therapist to spread those services. We also think it's going to be a more efficient delivery of those services because we're going to bring those special education services into personnel that are funded within the district. So they'll be serving not only the special ed population, but the general ed population. They're going to get to know the culture of our school and our district. And just the advantage of having mental health therapists serving our special ed population that are housed within our schools and serve all of our students for the full-time assignment is going to be an advantage over contracting out people who come in specifically to work with the special ed students and then leave the sites to go serve other students throughout the county as part of other contracts. So the savings will still be $542,000 to the general fund because once again, we're going to use the money we're currently spending from the special education budget for those contracts and then also the one-time funding from the music arts discretionary grant. What that one-time funding is going to do is it's going to give us 1 year where we can see if there's further reductions that we can make in the district so that that third mental health therapist can be rolled into the general fund if the data that we could collect indicates that we need to retain that third mental health therapist. We don't know what that data is going to tell us because we haven't gathered it yet. But if the data tells us that we want to retain that third mental health therapist, then we have a year to identify funding within the general fund so that we can make 3 positions an ongoing funded effort by the district. Next slide. When we're looking at the budget development process, Superintendent Adamson did a real nice job of talking about how we are pretty early still in the budget development process. When we came here on February 6th, we talked about a 3% reduction across all the department budgets. When we're here this evening, we're talking now about a 5% minimum reduction to the department budgets. Once again, this is going to be a floor that we're going to seek from each of the departments. It is not going to be the ceiling. It's not the maximum that we're seeking to reduce, but if we can realize that 5% reduction in our department spending, we're going to have a savings of $175,000. We're also going to reduce our travel and conference spending by 50%. That is going to pertain to staff, to management, as well as the school board, and that would realize a savings of $150,000. We're leaving 50% less because there is some conferences that are going to be necessary for people to attend in order to perform their duties for the district. The 2 that come to mind most prevalently would be a teacher that is teaching AVID and might be new to the program that would need to attend the AVID training during the summer, or someone that might be new to teaching an advanced placement class so that they could receive the training in order to deliver those services effectively to our students. We're also going to freeze all food for meetings. Sometimes when we have a day-long training, what we like to do is to purchase lunch for the staff and to have some time to kind of bond with our staff in the middle of that training. It's just a luxury that we aren't going to be able to afford at this time, and that's going to result in a savings of $7,500. And I think the last bullet is a big one. We're going to look at a freeze from the unrestricted general fund to our transfer to Fund 40. Fund 40 is the fund that holds our capital outlay expenses, and capital outlay is the money that we would fund to do new construction or new projects in the district. Because the taxpayers were generous and passed the Measure B bond, we're going to have funds that are going to be able to help with the construction of new facilities within the district. And so we feel at this time it's prudent for us to take that $200,000, keep it in the general fund so that we can free some of that money up to fund some of the additional positions that we're looking to add in 2026. So that savings is going to amount to about $533,000. We're also looking at an additional $20,000 worth of savings from district expenditures, looking at reducing district staff overtime by about $10,000. And then the superintendent mentoring is not going to meet its fruition at the end of this year, which is going to result in about a $10,000 worth of savings. So there's going to be about $20,000 in additional savings moving on to 25-26 that will be coming from the district office. So our savings on February 6th amounted to $131,000. Those bulleted items represent an increase of about $402,000 with another $20,000 coming from the district office. There are some similarities between our recommendations on February 6th and February 27th, and I'd like to talk about those at this time. As we mentioned, we're still looking at a 4.0 FTE in teaching positions, although we are going to keep the Spanish and digital learning programs intact. We're going to continue to recommend a 0.60 full-time equivalent or 3 middle school sections. And then we are going to go forward with the reclassification of our principal on special assignment to an assistant principal. As far as the additions, these are the same ones that we were recommended on February 6th. We're looking at adding an itinerant special education teacher. This is a special education teacher who could help alleviate heavy caseloads throughout the district. We are also looking at adding an taking our elementary intervention teacher who is currently funded with one-time money and rolling that intervention teacher's salary and benefits into the general fund. That is one of the areas where we expect to apply the Fund 40 funds that we are no longer going to transfer into Fund 40. And then we are also going to hire a 1.0 full-time equivalent high school teacher. You will remember that we currently have 9 teachers that are working a 1.2 assignment at the high school. This would allow 5 of those 1.2s to reduce back to a 1.0. The cost difference of hiring someone new as opposed to having current teachers take on the extra assignment is $58,000. So that would result in an increase in spending by $58,000. So our overall expenditures that we're looking to add are $378,000, and the savings that we have in common from February 6th result of $598,000. So in summary, with regard to staff reductions on February 6th, we had recommended $1.5 million in staff reductions. That has been reduced to $1.15 million. As far as the staff additions, it's the exact same. We recommended $378,000 of staff additions. It is the exact same this evening for our recommendation. As far as program reductions go, those reductions that can be made through budget development, we had recommended $131,000 of reductions on February 6th. That has been increased now to $533,000. Just something to note here too, we do expect to realize further reductions as we go through that budget development process and see that through to the end. So when we're looking at the total savings on February 27th, we're looking at $1.3 million up from $1.26 million that was recommended on February 6th. And we're going to talk a little bit about the budget development process now. I'd like to turn it back over to Dr. Adamson.
Well, thank you, Chief Rogerman. So the next slide is going to just give you a little bit of a snapshot. I've talked a little bit about the community input that we've received over the past few weeks, and this is specific to the survey that was sent out. And so, you know, I mentioned 242 responses, and that was over, goodness, I mean, it was a period of 4 days. It did remain open a little after. I know we had some come through that break as well, but the predominance of it came in those first few days. So again, just very evident that, you know, many of the members of our community and staff, you know, voices were gathered and heard, and we're grateful for that. Moving on to the next slide, I just want to share a little bit of a summary of the feedback that was the key themes that filtered to the top as we, you know, looked at, you know, what people were saying. I think what came through as the 2 questions that were asked was, you know, ideas for reducing expenditures, and the second was ideas that community members had on ways that we can increase our revenue. So the first item that came on the left side, as far as, you know, ways we can reduce spending, really identified staffing and administration adjustments. You know, there were and I sort of a list of some of those ideas that came through, things like exploring early retirement and notification incentives. And that would simply be along the lines of, asking all of our staff to notify us by the end of January if they are intending to retire that year, because that really would, if we were to know early on, that ends up our not having to necessarily do the layoffs that we know. So moving forward, that's absolutely something we'll be exploring. Consider combination classes, a temporary freeze on new hires and reclassifications, elimination of positions through attrition. So I think this is absolutely ideas that, yes, we can and will be considering as we, move into the following 3 years. The second was program and course reduction. So really ideas that came here was, things along the lines of limiting electives, field trips, under-enrolled courses, consider temporary freezes on new programs. And really, what also came through there was professional development. And, as you've seen in our proposed reduction, that is absolutely an area that we know confidently we can realize some significant savings, particularly when we're looking at reducing the cost of travel for many of those, professional training, professional development opportunities. What I will say is, the feedback on, because we had identified some specific positions, the mental health positions, Spanish for 4th and 5th grade, and our, digital learning, there was feedback that came in specifically about those positions. And I think there was, sort of balanced, input on both sides. But as you'll see, I think, what was very strong, of what we received, particularly from the board, was, our need to really look at other alternatives for those. Testing and curriculum was another area of focus, ideas along the lines of, and this was particularly from our teachers, reducing the costs that we're spending right now on our local assessments that we do. That's, many of you will be familiar with the MAP testing, and really looking at our state testing, the CASP interim assessments that they offer for free. We currently have a 3-year contract with the MAP assessment company, and that expires at the end of next year. So when that does expire, that will absolutely be something that we can, confidently look towards. Operational efficiencies came up. So things along the lines of ways that we can reduce electricity, printing, travel, legal expenses, definitely was something that, came through, and something we already as a district are looking at on ways that we can sort of streamline and really, bring down some of those costs. Now, obviously, when it comes to legal cases that, we need to as a district consider, there is a requirement that, yes, we utilize our legal counsel, but, are there ways and areas that we can reduce that? Absolutely. And that'll be an area of focus in moving forward. As I said, some of the ideas that came through, from our community, really what I see it as, it's given us an opportunity and me a strong idea of, some of the information that's out there in our community that really we as a district need to do a better job at communicating and explaining, to our community what some of these things are and how some of the programs we offer are funded. And this, falls into that category. There, were some ideas along the lines of, maybe reduce some of the or reconsider the free and reduced meal program that we offer. I want everyone to know that is actually completely, all of our meals are completely funded through a combination of state and federal sources. And that's all part of our universal free meals program. That includes the staff that we have in order to, make that program as effective and incredible as it's been. So again, that's not really something we're considering, and those are the reasons. And the last one also, facilities and maintenance, there were things along the lines of, suggesting to delay non-essential maintenance projects and, sort of reduce where we can on custodial hours. I think that, as Chief Rogerman mentioned earlier on, some of the expenditures, particularly in our capital outlay fund, that, really with the passing of the bond, currently Measure B and bonds before that, we have that funding. We're obligated to, to our community to really follow through on the plans that we put into place. But I think what's important there is those funds don't have any impact on the unrestricted general fund. So, you will see that, us moving forward with those plans as we are right now for our master facilities plan for Measure B, we have that obligation to our community to ensure that we are keeping up with maintenance. We have very, heavily aging facilities around the district. And so, I think in the long term, we realize savings as long as we can continue to keep up, that maintenance. So again, that's not necessarily an area we'll be considering. On the other side, as far as revenue increases, there were some, really great ideas that we received. But the one that came to the top that was mentioned most commonly was that idea that I mentioned earlier on expanding and, ways to grow enrollment. And I think, again, what I want everyone to understand is as a basic, aid district, the reason we really have students only from within our residential area is because of the fact that, yes, they are contributing as residents of Pacific Grove to that, the basic aid funding that we receive, to the property tax funding that we get. There's been a lot of talk about declining enrollment, and I think part of it is we've referred to that as yes, one of the reasons that we're having to reduce, that we're having to and can reduce in some of our programs and some of our the number of teachers that we have, if there is a decline in enrollment at a particular grade. We actually have the data that we have been collecting, over the past few years that really give us that ability to know exactly which of our families are moving out of the area and for what specific areas. And so, we're able to refer to that. And really an analysis of that data and an analysis of the trends over the years really indicates that it really isn't predominantly as a result of families leaving. Sure, do we have families at certain grade levels moving and making decisions that they get to as a family to make those choices if there is another school that can meet their needs or has a program that we're not able to offer as a smaller district? Absolutely. But what we see as I'm looking at that data, we're seeing sort of a little bit of there's a lot of in and out. As some families leave, we get new families coming in. I was just at some of our schools today and, January, February is a very busy time of year where some of our military families move in. And so we're really bringing in, and actually seeing a slight increase, in that regard. So I think when we're looking at those reasons, and if it is families who are making those choices, the numbers are really not alarmingly high at all. A recent study that has been done on our demographics and an analysis of enrollment is really showing to be more specific to that. It's been a demographic shift. And so the reason really is we look at, and it's a fascinating slide that we'll actually get to see at our engagement, input forums on Monday and Tuesday, that MGT, who's the company we've partnered with to do our needs assessment and who is helping us with our master facilities plan, has actually just conducted for us. I just got to see the information yesterday, and it actually shows fascinating from the age of 0 to 5 that there has been a downward trend of number of students within our district, and really what that's showing is that we have families who are moving into the area who are maybe sort of older in age and don't have young children coming into the district. So I think as you see that, and really as we're looking at the immediate 3 years ahead, that number continues to dip. So what does that mean, right? That means that we're having, there are going to be fewer students coming in at our youngest ages. And I think a big part of that as we have conversations and we talk with families is that, the property values in Pacific Grove, it's making it very maybe not necessarily for a means with a family who has a young children to be able to afford the properties here in Pacific Grove. So as much as we know and we hear that constantly from families that are trying to do anything they can to actually move into this district because of the school district, our real estate agents and management companies within the area talk a lot about that. That's the feedback that they receive. But it's maybe not necessarily within the means of many, of sort of an average earning family. So again, what does that mean for us? Sure, we need to really look at, and are there things that we can consider to, really make that work for us as a basic aid district? There are, and those are absolutely, options we'll be considering as we move forward. Do we need to do a better job at, I think, showcasing the programs that we do have, to our families who maybe do have that ability to choose and could go to a private school? We want to be able to retain those families, absolutely, and really, I think, showcase and highlight what we have that makes Pacific Grove so incredible. There was a question asked earlier, what makes us different? What makes us stand out? So yes, we need to do and make sure that we're shouting that from the mountaintops and capturing those families who can live here and who do have that choice. And we will absolutely be doing that, in the coming year. But again, I wanted to just take a moment to really put that out there and share with all of you that that's important information for us to have, and what we're looking forward in the coming years. Another idea was community and business sponsorship. So things along the lines of, can we look at, seeking corporate sponsorships for athletics, music, and clubs, things along those that nature. Absolutely, those are ideas we'll consider. Fundraising and donations, trying to work with PTA. We had, one of our PGTA presidents online earlier, really working together with them and increasing those fundraising efforts and donation drives. Charging for events was another idea that came forward. Can we sort of realize some more savings there? And then just maximizing state and local funds. I think, an idea that came forward there a little was, looking at parcel taxes. I know that's not, really a positive and maybe a popular, choice, but it's something that came through that and, something that we would, absolutely look at as a consideration. The next slide just really highlights additional ideas that could realize additional savings that I just want to summarize briefly. As we said already earlier, that the plan that we have that we're proposing this evening is an initial plan. We will continue to identify further areas that will result in additional savings to what we've presented. And one of those is summer school. Those were ideas that came forward from our community, from our staff, to really look at ways we can either reduce costs there through the offerings that we do, through the staff, and also, can we consider possible credit recovery options for our students throughout the year. Interns to support student mental health. Chief Rogerman talked a little bit about that. So that will absolutely become a part of our comprehensive mental health support plan for next year. Review all professional development and consultation expenditures. We are absolutely, looking at that. All of our contracts across the board that really will not carry over and roll over or be renewed for next year, that will really result in solid savings. Partnering with neighboring districts for professional development is a great way of realizing additional savings. Legal fees, I've talked to you about that already. I do want to just make it known and mention that, under the topic of negotiations, so, we are in the active process of negotiating with both of our bargaining units currently. The proposal that we are presenting this evening does not take into account any changes in compensation that, maybe as a result, of that negotiations process. So I really just want to be upfront and transparent about that, that has not taken that into account. As an example, if we were to, agree on a 1% compensation raise, for all of our employees, that would result in approximately $462,000. So that would really be in addition to, so we would have to reduce that off the reduction plan that we've presented this evening. Just something to keep in mind. But we will be looking at all options and, through that ongoing process. And then, I refer to it as the R word, reconfiguration, that has come through, quite substantially through the input that we received from both staff and from, our community members. For those who don't know what that term is, essentially, that has been something that's been considered over the years. I think there was at one point a possibility of the district moving in that direction, and then, it was abandoned. But essentially, with our 2 elementary schools, it would look at the option of assigning one school for our lower grades. So you'd look at it sort of maybe a TK through first or TK through second situation, and then the other school assigned for 3rd through 5th or 2nd through 5th grade. That is very much a long-term consideration. That would be sort of a multi-year plan. It would be something that we'd have to have conversations starting with the board, that if there was interest in that, in considering it. So I mention it only because it has come up, it continues to come up, but really this is not a next year plan, right? This would be something we would absolutely take steps if that were to be a movement in a direction the board were to indicate we wanted to go, of really, starting through that input process and really, putting a plan together on what that would be. So at this time, that is not one of the considerations. All right, so our next slide, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Chief Rogerman to really talk about some of the highlights that came through from both of our bargaining units.
Thanks again, Dr. Adamson, and it's a real pleasure to talk about this slide, just because the input that we've gotten from both CSEA and PGTA has been valuable. I think that the members that are in the audience here this evening probably saw some of their ideas on the previous slide. And there is just a lot of like thinking that we have going on in the district. And all of the interactions that we have with our 2 bargaining units are very positive. And from the district, administrative standpoint, we just want to express our appreciation to the bargaining units for the cooperative relationship that we have. Dr. Adamson talked a little bit about the MAP testing and the savings that we could realize in the ongoing years. Just want to make sure that the public knows too that the current funding of the MAP testing was done with that one-time funding that is we're running out. So that is one of those one-time costs that we're going to be able to eliminate moving forward. The current MAP testing does not have an impact on the unrestricted general fund. Also, suggestion was a one-year freeze on adding any new extracurricular programs. If you think in terms of a coach and assistant coach, any new extracurricular program costs in the neighborhood of $10,000. So if we don't add any, that would be an ongoing cost that we would save. And that bullet also is talking about not reducing any of the current extracurricular programs because we know those are valuable to our families as well. Third bullet talks about limit or eliminate overtime for salaried and management employees. There's been a little bit of a misunderstanding about whether or not management and salaried employees can earn overtime. Management and salaried employees do not. If you look on Transparent California, it will show an overtime category and show some of the administrators in the district receiving a payment in that category. A couple of years ago, we had a finding from CalPERS that found that some of the classified management staff had not taken the 15 paid holidays that they were, entitled to. And so the district had to go and pay them the back pay for working those 15 days. And when it came out in Transparent California, it was listed as overtime. Also, an evaluation of all digital and curriculum subscriptions. That is part of the Measure A process, and yearly we go through and do an audit of how much use those subscriptions are getting. I think the one that stands out for all of the educators in the room right now is Read 180. Part of it is because it's expensive and there's been kind of a movement away from usage of that program. So that will definitely be one that we evaluate going into 25, 26 that could result in tens of thousands of savings. Transportation, the use of vans whenever possible for sporting events. That is a regular practice for our transportation department. I think if we can make a greater use of slightly larger vans that the district owns, there might be more opportunities for us to realize those savings as well. I don't know why I'm so thirsty tonight. But also the next one is cease funding for school planners. Currently, every student at the middle school and the high school receives a planner that is like a spiral booklet where they can write down the day's assignments and things of that nature. We can reassess the need for that print planner now that there's an expanded use of Google Classroom throughout our schools. Combination classes at the elementary school might be something that we can look at, especially when you're looking at the older TK and younger kindergarten students. It might make sense if it were a cost-saving measure to combine those two age groups in a combination class. Looking at postponing the ELA adoption. We don't know what the savings would be for a postponement of that adoption yet, because we would have to try to extend our current adoption for 3rd through 5th grade with benchmark advanced. And we would have to inquire with the company if they were willing to do a year-by-year adoption as we currently have with the Super Kids ELA program that we use in grades TK through 2. Limit outside consultants. If we find that one of our employees needs the benefit from some coaching, we can look at peer assistance review within the district rather than trying to hire someone from outside the district to provide that kind of assistance. Another recommendation was to reconsider the Monterey Bay Swim Club agreement. Right now, we give them free use of the pool in exchange for swim lessons for our students in 5th grade, and I think there's a swim unit in 9th grade as well. However, I'd have to confirm that with PG High School. And then also take a look at the overnight field trips that we take and see if those are a cost that the district can continue to bear. So just once again, we really thank our PGTA and CSEA colleagues for these ideas, real constructive, thoughtful suggestions that we'll be looking into as we continue through the budget development process.
Thank you, Chief Rogerman. And really the last slide for this presentation is really just to highlight a few areas that we felt, based on the conversations we've had, the input we've received, what might require a little further explanation. I think the first one on that list is our adult school program. We've had quite a bit of information, very positive, already shared this evening by, others within the community. But I just want to be very clear that that is a program that is actually funded through restricted and categorical funding. So it is funded and doesn't have that, once again, there's no impact on the unrestricted general fund. There's been some question along the lines of, well, why do we have, could we reduce programs there? Why do we have 2 administrators? But again, that is all, that is funded, through the funding we receive. And because the classes go all the way through into the evenings till 9 o'clock at night, there is that need for, administrators, to have 2 that really sort of overlap a little through their schedules. But again, that is something that's a definite positive draw, within our community. And, we, from what I understand is I think at this point it's almost 1,800 students, close to 2,000 that, they've been able to realize for this year. So just want that out there. Our community high school program, that has been, there've been ideas along the lines of could we, reallocate that program to Pacific Grove High School, to the campus. There's very specific ed code that requires for a community high school program to have its own campus separate of any other comprehensive high school program that you offer. So that really is not an option. And really, even with that, I mentioned it earlier this evening. I think that is a program we are able and fortunate to be able to offer that really meets the needs of our students of highest need, and who I truly believe, if not for that program, would otherwise not be graduating. And so I think it's a definite plus and a benefit for us that we continue to be able to offer that and meet the needs of those incredible students. Just decreasing enrollment. I think I've talked a lot about that already, right? That impacts programming and staffing, not the funding. That funding remains the same. Really, if there's a little bit of a decrease, it means we're able to spend a little bit more per student. Mental health, our mental health comprehensive support plan. I think Chief Rogerman did a really nice job of adding in more information about what that's going to look like as we realize, that for next year. But I really just want, everyone to know that I think, Chief Rogerman made a comment earlier that said, we haven't collected the data yet. And I think what we're referring to when we say that is that we haven't collected the data with that new plan in place for next year. As we've made those decisions and are looking at really reducing our outside consultants, this is truly going to give us a chance to realize a support plan in place that has all of our employees, our own individuals who it gives us a chance to fully streamline how we're servicing our students, which of those roles, whether it's our psychologists, our counselors, our mental health therapists, the interns who we're going to be, bringing in, what their specific role is to ensure that there isn't overlap, there's not a duplication of services, which is really what we've identified has been occurring this year. So I think we feel confident in how that's going to look. So the data we'll be collecting will be with that new plan in place. So this time next year, we're able to make informed decisions about, whether, we need to maintain that number of staff or whether we can make adjustments. District office and management staffing. I think there was a lot of feedback and sort of focus on the staff here at our district office and really managers, and that would be sort of our principals, directors, assistant principals. Again, I use this has been such a great opportunity as we've gathered this information to identify a way for us to share more information about how different roles work and how programs are funded. The role of the district office, I think, there's definitely a question and maybe a misunderstanding amongst some of, what is the need of the individuals who work here? And the way I like to see it is our district office really provides that foundation of support that is there for our school sites to ensure that we're providing the tools. There's, obviously compliance components, right? As a state public local educational agency, there are departments that we are required to have. There are compliance and accountability reporting requirements for each of our various departments that we offer that we have to have in place. And in order to do that, we have to have people, meeting those needs. And the way I see it is if we're doing a good job at that, right, in providing those services that really are there for the individuals who are at our school sites, that allows them to do their jobs well, where they're focused, purely on the services that are directed towards our students. I like to see it as, no matter what the role within our district, every individual has a direct line of support to our students. And I think when we look at it that way, again, within our, culture of everyone plays a vital role, right, in order to ensure the success of our students and seeing them all the way through to, their final graduation. So I think that's the first piece. There has been a lot of mention of, certain departments, in particular, the HR department was mentioned specifically in some of that feedback that there's, been, additional individuals and employees added. That is a direct result of audits that we have actually had done from outside companies over the past 2 years that really have come in to analyze and look at our various departments, in particular our HR department, to, look at efficiency and streamlining of services. And it was really as a direct result from that report and their recommendations that there was additional staffing added to that particular department in order for them to, be able to be effective in the way that they conduct business and provide support to all of our employees. Even with the adjustments we made, we still did not even realize all of the recommendations, that they made. So I think even with that and with the comparative studies that we do anytime we add additional staffing, we do studies that compare us to other similarly sized districts within the area. Even in looking at those results, we really were able to see that even so, we're still, understaffed to a certain degree, but, really we're able, as we look at each of our departments, to, I think, function, and be able to meet the requirements of those roles in each department effectively at this time with the staffing that we have. I'd mentioned at our last meeting that, some of our departments really are 1 or 2 people departments, where when you compare to, some of our comparative and comparable districts, you have those layers of administration, where you may have a director and then a coordinator or an administrator below that director to, meet the needs. Several of our departments, don't have that. And again, I think, there's the workload is there. We're able to manage that. But, we're not, I'm mentioning this because that's one of the reasons you're not seeing any of those major, reductions in the proposal that we're bringing forward, because of the, remarkable impact that would have were we to make those reductions. And then ultimately, yes, I think, we've talked about the competitive offerings, our ability to recruit and retain, just qualified people in each of those areas. We've talked a little about the cabinet restructuring, and there were slight changes in some of our cabinet members, over the last year. Again, that was as a result of those comparative studies that we really needed to make an adjustment in title only. The only change in salary that resulted was within our HR department. And again, that chief officer of human resources came out as a result of the recommendations of that audit that was completed. But other than that, those changing titles were purely done as a means to really separate cabinet from, other director levels. And really the last one, I think that said, our commitment, as a district office, as Chief Rogerman has shared already, we've seen some rollbacks and some, delays on reclassifications that we've taken through that combination of reducing overtime, a freeze in a rollback in one of those positions, and ultimately just a reduction in contracts and legal fees, and our ability to add, I think, the on-site support that Cabinet is able to give more of that face time at our sites will be a commitment that we make, in moving forward. So that really is that last final slide that I think that takes us in summary. I've said it in our communication, that we've been providing over these past few weeks. I think resiliency, transparency are the 2 words that come to mind. I think, this is our effort to be sure that we're putting as much of that information out there, try to involve, every member of our community and our staff to really give their voice, to where we have landed on the proposal we presented to the board this evening for, your input and feedback. But ultimately, yes, it all entails tough decisions. And we've, that has been the common thread that we've talked about, since this topic came on the agenda. What I'm so proud of as superintendent of this district is really how I've seen in these past few weeks, everyone coming together. This has been, it's in critical times where we've had to make tough decisions. We've had to, really look at solutions-based decisions, but everyone truly has come forward because it impacts everyone in this room. It impacts everyone within our district community, whether there's a close tie to our school district or not. And I've seen, that willingness to want to come forward to, number one, collaborate, work together, and find a solution that's going to work for all. And with that, there's been that strong sense of unity, right? I think in tough times, we're stretched, but I've seen us as a community come together like never before. And so thank you for that and for just continue to uphold our core values of belonging, safety, and prosperity through that. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, President Hazen, for discussion.
Thank you very much for the detailed presentation. And just a reminder again, we're starting with public comment. So if there are folks in the room or online that would like to comment on the presentation and agenda item, now is the time to do so. Please, Hunter.
Dear board members, this is Marie Hunter. I'm happy to hopefully give some feedback on what can be a little bit more reductions in the budget in a way that's not too impactful. But I have noticed that in 2018 to 2019, we used to have $12,000 in for food. And now we're at 754 based on a 2023 to 2024 budget. And I'm wondering why all of a sudden we've had this jump. I can't imagine why we are feeding the whole community when we do have parents that can prepare lunches. I think in hard times, we have to make those kind of decisions. And I'm sure parents can prepare an even better and healthier lunch for their kids. What I've noticed also is I moved here about 4 years ago now, and I come from Silicon Valley, so a different culture. I will attest to that. But what I've noticed in PG that there's this culture of not really going for these big capital projects. And we're talking about like the hotels and the condos and stuff like that. And that's really impacting the amount of property taxes coming in. And I feel like even as a community, we should be socializing this idea that we are hurting the school by not helping these projects move forward. We need to put a little bit more pressure on the city to move forward with that. So. And then lastly, one of the things that I've noticed as well, just based on the number of autistic kids that are in the school, it seems that we have a larger concentration of autistic kids here than any other place. On average, there's 1 in 34 kids that have autism now. And I'm wondering if we are kind of encouraging families that have these special needs students to come to the school district, but we don't quite have the funds to be able to assist them. Just something to consider. I hope that it seems like you're on the right track. I don't really think that you can solve this budget problem within the next 3 years even. This is a very long-term goal. This is a big budget deficit. And if you don't want to have very harsh impacts on the community and the kids, you have to make a really long-term commitment to do some reductions in places that are needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Louis, do we have anyone online? No one online? I see one more in the room coming to the mic. Thank you, Mr. Gibbs.
Hi, Mike Gibbs again. I made these comments last year. I'll make them again. But I also am from Silicon Valley, and you all probably already heard me say that my wife and I founded an education company years ago. And this is very distressing. I spent a long time working with companies and helping them reduce their budgets, cut back. Starbucks just laid off 1,100 people. That's life. You all are in some ways immune from what real life is in the corporate world. These cuts should have been made 2 years ago. And you've heard the saying, rearranging the chairs on the deck of that Titanic. It's not going to get any better. It's going to get worse. 88%, you already know this. Everybody in the room knows this. 88% of your budget is personnel. Average cost for personnel in a school district in the United States is about 80%. You're 8% over. These cuts aren't going to change that. You can't do anything about pensions. It's kind of a state thing. But pensions are going to kill the school district, all of them in the state of California. I'm not telling you anything new. Go to Sacramento and ask for a little bit of relief on the pensions. I know people in here have got pensions. My brothers and sisters have got teacher pensions, right? My sister gets an $80,000 pension a year plus medical benefits. I think it's changed since then. Average people don't have those kind of benefits. I worked at General Electric. My pension, before they killed it, is now, I get a check every month, $347.67. That's it. And that's the real world. Y'all are sort of immune from the real world. I don't know what else to say, but cut once and cut deep. Otherwise, this is going to be an ongoing horrible. I wouldn't want to be in your seats. I don't want to be back here next year. Some of you all have 4-year terms. You don't want to be here for that. So I would suggest to the bargaining units, take 0. Don't need a raise. 1% is $460,000. Pensions are going up. Pensions have doubled and doubled again since 2018. It is killing the district and districts around the state. I don't know how to say it. I probably won't come again. If y'all don't make any, not that you're going to do it because I said anything, but you all already know this. The teachers know this. The bargaining units know this. They know exactly what's going on. But they say, well, I'm going to retire in 4 or 5 years. Let somebody else worry about it. I'll be on a cruise ship someplace. That's pretty harsh, isn't it? I wouldn't want to be in management's position here having to deal with this because it's a tough place to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone else online, Lewis, or anyone else? Okay, let's go to online. We'll start there and then come back in person.
Hi. So I just wanted to kind of echo a comment that happened earlier about being prepared here in the district for, welcoming students from all backgrounds. If we're committed to being inclusive, I think it's important that when we open our arms to other parts of the area, that we are also prepared to make sure that there's a pathway for students with disabilities. I recently did some research, and 3 to 7% of all students are living with a central auditory processing deficit. And up until 2023, Monterey County didn't even have a licensed audiologist who could run diagnostics for students with auditory processing deficits. And teachers are supposed to be able to, if a student is struggling academically, and we do have really wide achievement gaps, they're supposed to be able to not necessarily, diagnose, but identify that a student is struggling and that there could potentially be a need there that needs to be met. And we haven't been doing that. And so, I think that the importance of instructors being prepared for being able to work with families and kids that are living with disabilities is going to be crucial to the future for PG if we're really wanting to bring families in. And also the funding, I think there's a scarcity mindset too in a lot of ways where, the town there's a lot of tax revenue from real estate, and a lot of people feel entitled to that revenue. I think, but if we're trying to make a statement that we're going to be equitable for families, especially low-income families, that we are going to reach into our pockets and take care of these families as well from other areas who don't necessarily have the same funding in the districts that they live in. So it's just really something to think about to make sure that we're not setting students up for failure when we open their arms to them to come into our district.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you so much for your comments. Do we have one person in the room? Ms. Martinez.
Hi, everybody. My name is Barbara Martinez, and I'm the principal of Pacific Grove Adult School. I came to this district in 08, 09, and some of you were on the board at that time. And you can remember we were going through a great recession, and we were asked to make some very deep cuts back then. I just wanted to maybe give some clarity about adult education during that time. Before 08, 09, adult education was not funded with restricted funds, meaning that school districts had charge over those funds. And when asked to make those serious cuts, many adult schools were closed, actually, because districts were actually sweeping those funds to take care of major deficits within the general fund. And I just wanted to say thank you and end on a positive note, because what happened in 13, 14, 15, the state did a whole restructuring of adult education and basically gave $500 million and asked the state to restructure and form consortia and partner with the community colleges to really protect those adult students who really needed those funds to enter the workforce or to learn English or to get their citizenship or their high school diploma. There's two ways adult education is funded, actually three, through federal funds, state funds, and then fee-based programs, right? So we have community ed programs that bring in a nominal fee to pay for the instructor, right? And our district is basic aid. Like Dr. Adamson was saying, we're paid through our community members who really value education, who approve bonds to rebuild our schools and support our students. And so we have a very healthy community education of lifelong learners who approve our bonds, who really use our facilities. And so the way that our adult schools were funded were based on the expenditures of 13, 14. And before that, when districts were sweeping adult school funds, many districts were given nominal amount of funding to continue their adult education. But in Pacific Grove, our school board really rallied and said, we value adult education. And so we were given a healthy allocation from the state based on our expenditures of that year. So we were able to continue providing the services that were required and needed by our community members. So for that, I want to thank our school board, for our prior school board, and for our community who really do support adult education. And so therefore, when we rallied in Sacramento, we said that adult school funds should be restricted, that the funding that we get from the state from 13, 14, and here on out are restricted, and they cannot be swept anymore.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, but
Perfect.
appreciate the comment. Yep, thank you for the history lesson. There's only one of us, I think, on the board at that time, although I wish I had been. Any other public comment? We have one more online.
Hello there. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I did just want to point out a couple things. Number one, the average expenditure of any company towards personnel is at least 70%. That is the average. 70% is normal. So having an expenditure at like 88% in a company, if you want to even call it that, at 88%, is totally normal, especially considering that we're a school and we have multiple classrooms to try to keep a certain number of students, down. The other thing that I want to point out is that it used to be the norm for people to have pensions and a retirement that they could actually retire on. And just because times have changed and we now have major companies, major corporations like Starbucks, which is apparently laying off thousands of employees, despite the fact that they're making millions of dollars in profits, companies like that are engaging in union busting techniques. Just because that has become the norm does not mean that we should be punishing the hardworking teachers, educators, and administrators who spend their lives trying to help our country's future. So, is there room for, cuts in personnel? Unfortunately, yes. Are we going to have to adjust class sizes? It looks like we will. I mean, that is just the direction that we as a district are heading. However, the idea that we should be punishing people and making quote unquote deep cuts. This isn't a corporation where we can have people be working longer hours. This is a school district where we are trying to provide an education. And any educator can tell you that the difference between a classroom of 30 students and a classroom of even just 25 students, that 5 students makes a huge difference in the amount of time and care that we can provide to the children. So it's silly to treat a school district like a corporation, and there's a lot more to take into consideration. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much for your comments. Do we have anyone in the room? If not, we might have one more online. Okay, going back online to Chris.
Hi, this is Chris again, and I also wasn't planning on speaking, but I just want to echo what the previous speaker was saying, that this the more I'm involved in school and the more I see and listen and hang out with teachers right now, teachers not retired, but people that are working with kids right now, I realize how difficult their job is and how much it's changed and how it it's not a job that can be compared to any corporation. They're, in my view, second families, people that care, people that are invested. And yeah, we cannot treat this as a corporation. And yeah, maybe we live in a bubble, maybe, but it is a bubble worth protecting, I think. And this education system we need to make it live and live well. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anyone in the room or online? If not, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to the board. I was going to start in the middle with Trustee Otmar, I think, if that's okay.
Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. And that was a lot of information to process, I'm sure. I'm processing right now as well. So I do have some questions. My questions are going to revolve around the mental health portion of the cuts that we're discussing. I understand that these would be included in the RIF, so it's something that needs to come up early. For me, it's going to be about clarification. So, and clarification for myself, but also clarification for everybody that's listening, that's also concerned about mental health in our district. So we're cutting our contract with Monterey County Behavioral Health.
Correct.
My question to that is, I'm wondering how many hours they're spending with kids. I understand that I would imagine that they're taking the most severe of cases because they're county behavioral health. And so my question is twofold, I suppose. How many hours are they spending and how many students are they seeing? And with that answer, I'm wondering who's going to take those tasks on, because with a third mental health therapist coming on, which is preserving what we have now, these students have to go somewhere. And my concern is that third mental health therapist will be occupied completely by what Monterey County Behavioral Health is doing now. And so essentially we're down to 2 mental health therapists.
Right. And I think that the vision is to split the special ed caseload among the 3 that the district would retain, so that no one therapist is exclusively serving the special education population with spreading that caseload across 3. What that does is it still allows for each of the mental health therapists to have some time to serve the gen ed population. And then we'd be looking to augment the gen ed services with interns. And we talk a lot about the Otter Care program, but that might not be the only group that we partner with in order to bring interns into the district to support the mental health of our students. I think if there's one thing that has become very, very clear over the past five years, is that there's really been a shift in the recognition of the importance of the mental health services. That was certainly the feedback that we received last night. And so we understand the importance of exploring all the options to make sure that our students get the services that they have. What I don't have for you right now is the number of students that are being served and how many hours. I think that Executive Director Cork Anthony probably knows the number of students, but I don't know if I could put the pressure on you to share that with us at this time. Sure. Evidently I can. So
Thank you for that. Yeah, no pressure.
Currently, Monterey County Behavioral Health serves about 50 students. I don't have exact hours, but in terms of looking at percentage and looking at schedules, I would say it would be about 50% of their day that they have direct services to students with IEPs.
Okay, so 50% of their day, they would be available for general ed population.
I would, so it, as Chief Rogerman mentioned, it's not just them as well as also the interns supporting, just everyone across the board. And that's the whole point. Like, so we're not wanting to lose any support for students. We want to actually make sure we maintain that support for all students.
Okay, so I'll voice concerns up here because this feels like a very open forum and I feel like everybody is open to, we need to be as transparent as possible. I have concerns with bringing students in or people that are unfamiliar. I like that we're keeping it in-house. I think a familiar face is important. I think a lot of it is prevention. And kids are more likely to talk to somebody that they've seen and that they know and that they're comfortable with. I don't think a kid's going to walk in and say, oh, you're here and you're here for my mental health. Well, here's what my biggest issue is. It takes trust, it takes nurture, it takes a relationship. And so my concern with bringing in an outside, students from the outside, or Otter Care or any outside facility. I know Ohana is massively impacted. I would be shocked if they could even provide anything at this point. I mean, they're backlogged like unreal, which speaks to the issues that we're talking about tonight. So my concern is that we're not preventing anything. I don't know. I have got a lot of questions. Maybe I'm not phrasing them correctly. My wish would be that we could bring this mental health piece back. I understand rifts have to happen, but when these 3 therapists come back, I would like to see this come back separately because this is a big enough issue in our district. We've not seen the peak of mental health crisis with our students. I would like to see this come back completely separately so that we are addressing it the way that it should be addressed through discussion with all of the professionals that actually are in contact with the students every single day that have a pulse on what's really happening. I'll wait till you're done. Are you done?
Sorry,
I was talking to.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's hard to listen to 2 conversations at once. So what I was saying that I feel that's important that I want you to hear is that I think it's important that we are gathering the information from the people that are seeing the students, that have a pulse on what's happening in our district, as opposed to making decisions from this high level. And I'd like to see this come back where we can thoroughly discuss it and understand what the repercussions are going to be. I appreciate that there's going to be 3 mental health therapists coming back. But I'm not convinced that that's going to alleviate any pressure from what's happening right now. And I understand budget constraints and all of that, but that's something that's really concerning to me.
Help a little bit. Let me turn my microphone on. Executive Director Cork Anthony, could you just mention and defer a little bit too, because I know that you've mentioned the number of students that are being served by the outside consultants, but I know there's also been duplication of services, right? Where our current mental health therapists have also been servicing some of those same students, and I think that came to play in the decision, right, as far as why we feel that, with 3 mental health therapists in the plan moving into next year, that really we'd still be able to service the students based on the need that we know we currently have. Is that accurate, or could you speak to that just a little bit here? And then also I know we do have Ohana working currently, with our middle school, and that there is that additional support, and the hope would be that possibly that they, we expand that as well. But if you could speak to the first thing, that'd be great.
Part of speaking to the first thing is to talk about that I have been talking to the current mental health therapists that serve the students. So that is part of the discussion as we talk about what will they be able to support, who they will be able to support and what that could look like. And so we do have an overlap of some services where our mental health services therapists have been working with students that have been served by MCBH as well. So that's when we talk about overlap or duplication of services, and that's what we want to streamline. The other piece to that is that, again, we're meeting together, we're talking about it. So it is their input we're gathering, but we also want to make sure with that input that we gather that they have a voice. You know, they do have a voice in what we say. And also we're meeting with the counselors. So because we're talking about different tiered level of services. And that when we see that counselors and mental health therapists working together, that's what we're looking at. And when we talk about really truly collecting the data to see who's serving in a duplicate role of the same student, which that's some of the data showing right now. Even with the counselor and a mental health therapist seeing the same student. So we would just want to make sure, and when I say the same student, I mean they may serve them in a group, someone may serve them an individual, but it's still that student being served. That's what I mean about a duplication.
Okay, and I would imagine that the duplication would continue if the student needs group and individual.
In the sense of the individual services, no, but in terms of groups, yes.
Okay. I would just like clarification, I suppose, or more detail as we move forward. I'm comfortable with where we're at. I'd like to kind of move it along, but I'd like to see this come back so that we can explore further after that March 15th date. And you can come back to me, Elliot. I'm going to need to gather my thoughts again.
Okay, Trustee Schross will head around.
Okay, so I think we need to just take a breath in, let it out. We've been here before. I've been here before. And it makes me think of I had an aunt that had a heart condition, and we'd ask her, "How are you doing?" She goes, "Oh, she come and she go. She come and she go." It's kind of where we are. So we aren't really living in a bubble because we have been here before. We will get through it, no problem. I mean, it's not to say that we aren't concerned. We are concerned about everybody that works for us and does a good job. And these are difficult times when you have to look at reductions. But we will get through it. And really our biggest problem that I see financially is our healthcare problem. Okay. And I like what Marie Hunter said about advocating to legislators, but that's what we should be advocating about, is we need affordable healthcare, because that breaks our budget when we're trying to do any kind of help in terms of our teachers and our staff. It's just been untenable. So that's something that I believe that taking a progressive and strong approach with the powers that be to be really looking toward legislation to help us out here in Monterey County anyway. And the other thing is that, it says here, the ultimate goal is to eliminate the district's current structural deficit for 25-26. That's what we're doing. I think this is good. And the other thing we are going to be doing, as long as I'm on the board, is we are going to be planning for the future. We need to have those plans in place. Perhaps those plans, 5-year plans, weren't in place before, but we can see now, and I feel that everyone here is probably in agreement. I know that Dr. Adamson is, and we need those plans. And part of those plans will be, what do we do about healthcare? I mean, our mental health for our students. That definitely needs to be well thought out. So we're buying ourselves a year to figure that out, but we're not dropping it. So I appreciate all the work that you have done and everyone that has put in their time to help us out. I think we're okay.
Thank you so much. I might suggest, if it's okay with folks, just a quick 5-minute bio break before we continue on. No. Okay. Do you actually, I should say, Student Trustee Powell, would you like to make some comments maybe before that, so that way you can be excused? If you don't mind me skipping over you, I'll get to you afterward, Trustee West.
I don't really have any comments at this time.
Thanks for sharing. So we'll go ahead and take a 5, maybe till 10-minute bio break and meet back at 8:45 to 8:50. Thank you. Trustee Wax asked for the dramatic pause before his comments, so we're able to resume.
Okay, again, I appreciate the district's willingness to hear feedback and get input from everyone, and I appreciate the teachers and the union's recommendations. I think the map testing is an exciting possibility to look into. Just for the long term, in terms of, I mean, it's going to take a while, but I do think we still have to be more creative, even beyond the list of items in the presentation about increasing revenue. But I appreciate the budget reduction work this time. And just to be clear, the full-time employees that are suggested or proposed for reduction, that is based on next year's enrollment in, okay. Let's see. And I know this past week has really clarified that our revenue doesn't really change on attendance. And so the possibility of opening up our borders or opening up enrollment doesn't alleviate the budget concerns. But I was looking, is there any possibility, since I think someone commented that Monterey schools are at capacity or what have you, if we kind of consumed more of the Pebble Beach district's tracks, because right now it seems to be divided between Carmel, Monterey, and PG. I know this is, again, a very long-term plan, but that's more property tax revenue. That could be a possibility. And I know some people who come here are night owls and they like coming here, but speaking as a parent in our school, a great way to improve schools, there are plenty of volunteer opportunities, mystery readers, etc. And so I'm sure many teachers would welcome extra hands with reading and all that sort of thing. And it's fun. I could speak to it. But again, I appreciate all the work that went into this and all the communication with the community.
Great. Thank you so much for the comments. And I was going to start up by summarizing a bit, then we'll go left to you, Marilyn. That's okay. Regarding the staffing plans again, and I know you mentioned this well, Superintendent Adamson, but I want to just remind folks that these decisions have to be made by March 15th. Well, we do not even have final budget numbers from the state. I mean, you talk about corporate life, this is a very different world we're living in. So the other point that was brought up, increased enrollment may require us to bring back an additional FTE like this. We're not, this is the reduction plan to save money and to align with our class sizes, but it's not the end all be all by any means. So again, this was mentioned, but I do think it's important to reiterate, declining enrollment actually saves a basic aid district money, particularly per pupil. That's not a fun thing to think about. That's not what I'm suggesting we should aim for as a district, because it does have a cost, which is not monetary. It's come up a little bit, but just to hit on it a bit more, particularly things like course offerings. So, I've been also very interested in why kids leave the district and been asking those families I know that chose Monterey High or Mayos, and they've highlighted the insularity or small size of PG. They've had the same kids in the class since kindergarten, some of which they're might not have got along with their kid. And also just the reduced offerings, like by being a larger district, they can offer more, plain and simple, even if the cost per pupil is less. So no question in my mind, I don't think there's probably any question in this room that housing prices are definitely pricing out young families, as you mentioned as well. So this is something we're going to be challenging. Talking about long-term planning, these are the kind of things we need to think about. one just comment on terms of raising money, and I'm sorry, Brock, I'm not going to ask you many questions, so
No, that's fine.
I'll just talk at you for a bit. But one item that came up at the community event was the idea of a Pacific Grove Foundation, something that could PGUSD Foundation, that could be like fundraising. And we have some really critical various groups that already do this. I mean, we have Walk with Pride, we have the Breaker Club, or PG Pride, I should say, and was mentioned already once about the PGTA. I'll come back to quickly, but like, it's clear these ideas have to be pursued by outside of the district and outside of the board. So if someone's interested, a community member that wants to really run and build a foundation like some other areas in the state, again, I think it's a great idea, but that has to be done outside of our purview. But we heard tonight that PGTA at the middle school is struggling to get volunteers. We heard that, or I should say, I know that's true at some other sites as well. So it's, it sounds like a great idea, but I don't think it's something we want to be planning on either. I'll mention the one of the uncomfortable things you mentioned, but the idea of parcel taxes, particularly if they can be done in a non-regressive way, this should be explored. I know we passed the bond thanks to the voters, so I'm not suggesting it goes on the ballot right away. Partial tax, I think, was last on the ballot for PG in 2013, and it did not pass. It did not reach the 2/3 needed. But this past year, 10 out of 11 of the districts within the state of California had parcel taxes on the ballot passed. So again, we might be facing different needs, different valuing of our schools. Cuts don't have to be the only answer here. There's also at least one district, I think, in the state, San Francisco Unified, that has a sales tax that supports the schools too. So again, something to be explored. We've already levied developer fees at the encouragement of Assistant Superintendent Joran. So we're, and with the bond, we are doing what we can to help raise funds, but it's a bit of a zero-sum game with Prop 13 that we're just not bringing in always what we need. Partial taxes do exist in one of the neighboring basic aid districts that has helped their budget and reserves quite a bit. The last point is just following up on Trustee Otmar's point is, this is the critical, and should say Trustee Shamas as well. This is a critical time to think about assessing our needs and services. The point about affordable healthcare was brought up, but it's also just fundamental that our peninsula does not have the resources to support our kids. Our state is not doing enough. The federal, our federal government is not doing enough, and it's becoming the responsibility of the schools. Any educator, any site admin will tell you that is not the way it used to be, but this is a reality we're living in. So I do encourage, reach out to your legislators and tell them this is something that they're coming up short, because we need that help so we can get back to teaching the kids in class, not having to support them from tier 1 through tier 3. I was really encouraged to see the DO come up with a comprehensive support plan, for these, how we're going to come back with these, or, the mentioning of that coming back from the loss of services and then rehiring mental health. But, it does have to be done, I think, by committee. We have some leaders in the community. Trustee McNary brought up the bullying series being led by Principal Roach in the middle school. It highlights the successes and highlights the leadership we already have that we could build upon. Maybe having a committee that really is focused on how do we take the limited mental health budget we have and optimize that for all the kids? Because I think that's obviously a concern that came out from the community and came out from the members of the board tonight, at least. And this is in direct alignment, which we'll hear more about from Dr. Hedquist, LCAP goal number 2 on social emotional learning. So this is something that we have written into our district. So again, thank you guys very much for being so responsive to the community comments, and thank you for everyone from the community, from staff to parents, to community members that gave their ideas, because I do think we ended up in a better place. One other point that just came out, this concept of the I won't say deep cuts, because I think that is the absolute wrong way to run a school. But what I'll say is the original budget that was proposed had more staffing cuts. So that was one that probably would last us longer. But I think we've heard from the community, from the board, that we're not ready for that today. And I think I'm excited where we got to, recognizing that it's still an ongoing problem we'll need to deal with. So thank you everyone very much again for that. And so I will pass the torch on to Trustee McNary.
Okay.
Soliloquy.
At this point, most of what I would have said has probably been covered, but I do want to hit the thank yous, because I do think from the years that I've been watching board meetings and how this district operates, we've approached this process differently, and it has felt collaborative, and I've appreciated the transparency between the community forum and the participation from various groups. And really listening to the input from the community. I can see that, and this proposal does feel more collaborative. So thank you for getting us here. I'm comfortable moving forward with staff's recommendations on the reductions today. That being said, as trustee Shamas pointed out, I think this is the time, it's going to buy us some time to engage in some long-term planning and budgeting development, which I think is something we need as a district in order to move forward, in order to give some more certainty and clarity to ourselves and our community about what we value and what we prioritize and why we're spending our money where we are. So yeah, for tonight, I'm comfortable with staff's recommendation, and I also realize that anytime we have to make necessary cuts, there's a human impact. So I just want to acknowledge that. It's unfortunate. So thank you.
Trustee Wax, yeah, another comment.
Yeah, one more quick, or a couple more quick things. For clarification, on since it was noted as a long-term plan, with the 5% in reductions for budgets, that's not every year, that's kind of this year and then we see how things are, or is it the proposal to continue?
I mean, I think we're definitely looking for next year's budget, so it's a 1 year, but I think, you know, if it's required to extend beyond that, we will absolutely make that as we go through the budget development process, you know, long term. I think the benefit to it is we're going to, I think, realize, you know, areas that could really be, you know, eliminated completely, right? You know, anytime I think you reduce, you realize, okay, well, was there really a need, you know, or you find alternative, you know, options that could replace, you know, whatever those expenditures are. So, I mean, it's an immediate 1 year, but, you know, long term beyond that, you know, as we realize the savings for next year.
And then one other thing, the 88% stat about staffing costs has been repeated by our district office, I think previously too. But I think there is a bit of discrepancy because when doing the math, I think using some figures, it equals out to closer to 84, 86, just as a point of clarity. That's not that clear because I don't have the exact numbers, but it is lower than 88%, which would make it more in line with the 80% figure from around the state. That's all.
Any other comments? Trustee Otmar did mention she had to leave, so will not be returning to the meeting, but I do think she raised some good points too. So I'll agree with the point Trustee Padilla you raised about agreeing with staff's recommendation. I think this is the right way forward. I do think it's going to be important again as the budgeting process to start coming up with some of these plans for how we. Oh, do we have? I don't think someone who talked before. Yeah, I don't think I think unfortunately the board comment has left. Sorry, there's no opportunity for that. I apologize. But just to say that I think that we will have to really carry the torch for if we're doing less, you know, in some areas, how do we make sure that we're not leaving people behind? If that makes sense. And that's the challenge I think many of us face every day in our jobs. So, okay. Well, with that, I think you guys have a recommendation hopefully from us to proceed, and thanks for the information.
I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for everyone who participated. Okay. So I think that closes item 7, information discussion, and we're on to item 8, the action discussion, where we're talking about the ballot for CSBA delegate assembly.
Well, thank you for that, President Hazen. So yes, we're bringing forward this evening the board's, vote for delegate assembly representative. There's one member who has put forward their name, and that's David Kong. And so really the decision before the board this evening is to vote in favor of, him who is from Greenfield Unified School District. Or if there is another name you want to propose, you have that ability to do that this evening as well. So I turn it over to you.
So we can open up for public comment if anyone has an opinion on Mr. Hung. No? Okay, we'll go to the board. I'll just say quickly, I've met him at a number of events and he's always very engaged and participatory, and I think his heart is in it for the right reasons. So I'm definitely in support, unless someone here wants to nominate themselves. Okay, just checking. Okay.
But I will make a motion on staff's recommendation.
Excellent. We have a motion from Clerk McNary. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, so that motion was made by Clerk McNary and seconded by Trustee Shamas. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So it passes 4-0. So now we have the proposed board calendar. Do we have any changes on it from last week?
Right, the only change that we've added and that you won't see on here, but as long as the board is in approval of it, is we're just wanting to add the master facility plan update to the April 3rd meeting. So that way it would just be a matter of our being able to bring forward to the board a little bit of an update from the community engagement sessions we've done. And then really the intention would be to bring through sort of a version of where we are, a review of the plan for feedback from the board at the May 15th meeting. Yes. And if more time is needed, we can make that adjustment anytime. But that's really the only change that's being proposed.
Thank you. Again, we'll open up to public comment. Any in the room or online? If not, we will go to the board. Any concerns, questions about the board calendar?
Can I ask a question about March 27th? We have a special board meeting scheduled. Do we have a topic or is that staying on the books? I guess that's two questions.
Well, I don't know. You can ask two, you said one. I think we're keeping it on the books for now because the intention with that was board governance training. So if everyone could just, still hold the date, and the hope is that, yes, we can get something scheduled for that night. Yep.
Okay, great. Seeing no one else, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the proposed board calendar with the facilities master plan presentation on April 3rd or after if need be.
I'll second the motion.
A motion made by myself, seconded by Trustee Wax. Can I get all in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The vote passes. Oh, anyone opposed? No. Passes 4-0. So now we're on to information discussion, and this first item is going to be led by Dr. Hedquist.
Check, check. Oh, there we go. Good evening, trustees. Larry Hagquist, Executive Director of Educational Services, here to present the mid-year update for the Local Control Accountability Plan for Pacific Grove Unified School District 2024-2025. Before I get started, I want to say thank you to Director of Ed Technology, Matthew Binder, who helped out just a ton with gathering some of the data that you see in the document that's on page 155 in your board packet, as well as Carly Adams, our fiscal officer, who gathered a lot of the financial information that you see in the document that's on page 155. And that is our mid-year update for the Local Control Accountability Plan. It really was a team effort putting this together. And I have the privilege of presenting some wonderful information that I think will help anybody who's listening to see why, how Pacific Grove Unified can be differentiated from other schools in the area, because we do just have some wonderful news to present as we look at the data in our update and as we reflect on some of the goals that we set in alignment with in our LCAP. I'm going to start with a definition of the Local Control Accountability Plan, what it is. Really, what the LCAP is a 3-year plan that tells the story of Pacific Grove Unified. It is like a roadmap that allows us to achieve the vision of our district, as well as the core values of belonging, safety, and prosperity. It allows us to carry out those values through goals, actions, services, and expenditures that align with the needs of our local community. That's why it's called a Local Control Accountability Plan. It takes into consideration the local needs, and the goals are designed around needs that we identify through input from the community. The LCAP also must align with some state priorities. There are 8 state priorities, as you see on this next slide right here, identified by the California Department of Education. And on this slide, it is those 8 state priorities are categorized in 3 categories. Each LEA or local education agency must design their LCAP in alignment with these 8 state priorities. And the 3 categories presented here are conditions of learning, student outcomes, and engagement of both students and community. Purpose of the mid-year LCAP is 3 reasons: update, adjust, and inform. By update, what we mean is we want to provide the public with an update that takes into consideration current information. One example of that current information is that the state of California released the dashboard information in January. And so we take a look at that dashboard information and we include it in the metrics that you see within the document. So that's current 2024, actually it's 2023, 2024 data that we compare with the prior dashboard data from the prior year. Another reason that we deliver the mid-year update is to use this as a point of reflection. So what you're seeing here is a snapshot in the mid-year update, a snapshot of the overall LCAP that's going to be presented in June, right? So this is a snapshot at this point in the year, and this slideshow is a snapshot of the document that is in the packet. We use the information to help to make adjustments and revisions to budget expenditures. You heard a lot about the budget tonight and some of the considerations that we are already beginning to process as we move into budget development. And that budget development and some of those decisions will be reflected in the revised LCAP this year. And to also inform, we want to make sure that the information we're looking at is informing our process moving forward. March is our month of data collection for the LCAP. I've got several different meetings already planned. We've got student advisory committee meetings planned at every site. We've got parent advisory committee meetings planned. We've got two community input meetings planned, one for the end of March and one for the very beginning of April. And so we will go out in the community and gather that input in the same way that we did last year in devising the original document. And we will also be putting out surveys, taking all of that data, looking at that as we craft the revisions to this document. Again, this is a 3-year document. We are in the first year of implementation. So we would just be making modifications to the currently existing document and its 4 goals. Legal requirements, want to remind the board that there is a legal requirement that the board hears a presentation of the mid-year LCAP at a regularly scheduled meeting of the school board by February 28th, and it is February 27th. So we are meeting that requirement. And it's also a requirement that we present mid-year outcome data. What we're really talking about is data from the dashboard that is present throughout the document and that I will highlight in just a moment, as well as mid-year expenditures, which you see in the document as well. Now on to the goals. As you know, and as Dr. Adamson pointed out earlier in tonight's meeting, there are 4 goals contained within our LCAP. The very first goal deals with academic program. What I want to highlight as I present the goals is the way that the goals have been crafted to reflect our core values as a district of belonging, safety, and prosperity. So when you look at this goal for academic program, you see words that reflect issues of safety and belonging. For example, words like culture of we, families working together, families feeling welcome, safe, nurturing, and culturally responsive environments, culture of belonging, sense of connection. So these were very intentionally crafted to reflect our core values. And we also have metrics for each one of our goals that that are present in the document, and I'm highlighting a few of those metrics here in this presentation. For example, you have 3 metrics here that speak directly to what I just mentioned, our academic program. So we've got 3 metrics. One, graduation rate. You will see here in red with the red arrows, that's the current data. If you see a red arrow or a star, it's going to be next to current data. And I'll explain what the star means in just a moment. But our graduation rate went up. We were at 85.6%, and we in 2023, 2024, this is the current dashboard data, which reflects data from last year. We're at 93.4%, making good progress there toward a desired outcome of 97.5. So making progress toward that at the end of the LCAP 3-year LCAP 26-27. Our A through G completion rate, as well as our CTE completion rate, they have both gone up. We went from 37.2 students, percentage of the students meeting A through G, to 57.4% meeting A through G. Our CTE completion rate went up from 13.5% to 16.4% in 2023, 2024. And now for the star, a star basically means we have already met or exceeded the 3-year goal that was written into the LCAP last year. So the goal was to be at 80% outcome or above for 2026, 2027, and last year's cohort had a 91% AP pass rate. That means students scored a 3, or 91% of the students scored a 3 or better on their AP exams. So that's good information. Again, this was the academic metric, and some of the expenditures in that area, I'm just highlighting a few here, are we like to hire highly qualified staff, and you see the expenditures that go toward that, and those are mid-year expenditures. That's where we are at this point in the year. Instructional materials and resources. It takes good instructional materials and resources in order to really make sure that our classrooms are ready for our top-notch instruction. And technology and infrastructure. You see all the expenditures right there. On to goal 2, and this is our SEL goal that Dr. Hazen, you mentioned a little while ago. This is our LCAP goal directly related to social emotional learning, or SEL. Once again, you see our core values reflected in the language. Words like intellectually, physically, and emotionally safe, positive relationships among students and staff, increasing connectedness, everyone feeling connected. Those are words that reflect goal number 2. And the metrics, some of the metrics that we've highlighted in this presentation are chronic absenteeism. We want to see absentee rates go down. We feel that when students are in a good social emotional state, that they have a less likelihood to be absent from school. We know that metric, in this full transparency, it did not go down last year. It stayed at 15.8%. So we haven't really made a dent there, but we have implemented some strategies already that we've presented earlier this year to the board with the short-term independent study, replacing the unexcused absences that are justifiable. And we're hoping that if we can eliminate the unexcused absences, that absentee rate will go down a little bit. The caring adult topic right here, this is from the student survey of the California Healthy Kids Survey. The question was, do the teachers and grown-ups care about you? And we looked at students who answered yes most or all of the time, the top two answers. And in 2023-24, that was 83% of the students. In 2024-25, that was 95% of the students. And so that was a great increase. And guess what? We get a gold star for that because we've already met the 3-year goal. And active partner, this is from the parent survey of the California Healthy Kids Survey. In 23-24, 82% of parents said the school encourages me to be an active partner. And 24-25 this year, we had 89% of the parents say that. It's not quite a gold star, but it's really close, 1% away. So this is really positive news. Again, expenditures in the SEL area would include things like counseling services, which we've talked extensively about, and mental health therapists in tonight's meeting. Things like vector training for student safety and wellness that we implement through the PE programs. And these are the expenditures to this point in the year. Goal 3, this is academic support. This goal really speaks to our core value of prosperity. When you look at the language here, you see that we want all students to prosper. And so we want them to receive the necessary differentiation and support in order to be able to succeed. We want to close the learning or the achievement gap. We want to make sure that we provide targeted interventions so that all students are being lifted up. And that we can increase test scores across the board for all demographics, including English learners. Some of the key metrics that speak to this goal are the ELA and CASP results and math CASP results. I reported on this in November of this year, and wanted to reiterate that Pacific Grove Unified is at the top of the county with respect to the ELA CASP results and the science CASP results. Here we saw an increase from 70.7% of our students meeting or exceeding to 72.78% of our students meeting and exceeding, once again, top of the county. Our math CASP results, we went from 56.88 meeting or exceeding to 57.93 meeting or exceeding. And if you look at the California dashboard, you will also see another metric that's called the distance above standard. And that's really the average distance that we are above the meeting expectations in that category. And then another gold star for our EL progress rate. We went from 54.4 making progress to 70.4 making progress in 2023-2024. Again, expenditures in this area with respect to goal 3 would be intervention related expenditures like ELA intervention, AVID, math intervention, and you see the expenditures to this point in the year here. And finally, goal 4, this is our cultural proficiency goal. Again, you will see language that supports our core values, phrases like culture of we, working together, families feeling welcome, culture of belonging, strong sense of connection. Key metrics that speak to this goal. These metrics right here, the bullying and belonging come from the LCAP surveys. And those LCAP surveys were administered last year around this time and in March. And so what you see here is the 2023-2024 data under bullying. And we will ask these same questions in 2024-2025. That will be part of the surveys that go out in March this month. And so we will see how we do with respect to that in the before and after survey work. Diverse curriculum. This one is from the California Healthy Kids this is answered disagree or strongly disagree to the question, this school provides instructional materials that reflect my child's culture, ethnicity, and identity. We want this number to be low because it's disagree or strongly disagree. And we went from 19% down to 16%, which is positive for us. The 3-year goal is to get all the way down to 5%. And I don't know where Director Rogaman last year got these 3-year goals, but some of them seem quite ambitious, and I'm I'm impressed that we've been able to already meet a few of them. But some of them are also quite intimidating too. But we will get there. And then key expenditures in cultural proficiency area would be things like professional development, community partner contracts, cultural proficiency team. And then highlighting the budget to this point in the year, total LCFS funds that were adopted in the original LCAP document is presented right there, 32,510,368. Clearly, that's not our entire budget. This is the budget as allocated to our 4 goals that we have. And you'll see that we're right about on target at this point in the year with expenditures. A little more than half of it has been expended. And then also including LCFF supplemental concentration grants funding that is right there. And that would be things like educator effectiveness funds, lottery funds, and some categorical funds that are part of this year's budget. What are the next steps? We need to revise the LCAP for our year 2 of implementation. As I mentioned, we are in year 1. And before we make revisions, we need more data. We need more input. And that's where the meetings that I mentioned earlier come into play. And the surveys that I mentioned earlier come into play. So we will hold advisory committee meetings, community meetings. We will send out student community surveys. We will take that information. We will use the budget development process to help make revisions to the LCAP as necessary. And I have a closing thought for the evening, and it is a quote from Dr. Brene Brown, who I just love her work. When you get to a place where you understand that love and belonging, your worthiness is a birthright and not something you have to earn, then anything is possible. And I think that just captures what we stand for as a district, that we want people to feel like they belong. We want everybody in the community to feel that way, students especially, so that they can prosper. And that's my mid-year LCAP presentation for tonight. I welcome any questions or comments.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm going to look and see who looks at me first, and then they can, okay. Trustee Wax, I saw your hand up. Oh, we have public first, I think. Yes, sorry. Public comment first. We have one person online. Audrey, I think you're up.
Unmute. Okay. Hi, good evening. I see we're all the late crew. My name is Audrey Cordova. I am actually one of the mental health therapists in our district. And it's an honor to be able to serve in this district for many of the reasons that Dr. Hagquist presented in the LCAP. I will try to make it all within the 2 minutes and 39 seconds. The reason why I wanted to speak up was because the work that we do, this kind of ties into what we talked about earlier, but I'm going to keep it on the LCAP. The work that we do is preventative, and it aids with meeting some of those goals of what Dr. Hagquist put on the LCAP. One of the examples that came up for me as he was presenting is, for instance, under goal number 4, helping people feel welcome. 16% reported in the goal metrics under number 2, said that they didn't feel that the curriculum was diverse enough. And so part of what we also do as providers within our district, we're doing a bunch of different things, but we're also some of the people who have the opportunity and the time and are gifted with being trusted to explore a little bit more about how we make that number better and how we make things different and how we help each other feel like they belong. Another example that I wanted to put out there is, yes, we measure beautifully about math, A through G. We talk about English. We do all the things. And then you also have us coming in to infuse another perspective. You know, how do we measure students' creativity and help them feel worthy and like they belong and like they can contribute beautifully to what we have to offer in our school district and our community? And so there were a lot of other questions, and I'm running out of time. I see the little clock. There's a lot of other questions that everybody had about what we do and who we are. And we're more than happy to, at a later time, address all that. But I did want to tie into the work that we do as mental health therapists in the district. It's also aligned with the culture of we and all the goals we all have together. And myself and the other therapists that work in the district, we are constantly working in collaboration and combination with just about every staff in the district. I would even argue if I forgot the name because I'm speaking, but even food service, even all the way to custodial. I mean, we are everywhere and we're talking to everybody. So I wanted to put that out there in case there was a wonder or you have any questions. I'm here, we're here, and thank you.
Thank you for your comments and the music. And I think we have one more online. Is there anyone in person, just really quickly? Not, we'll go to Miss Molly Daniels.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm really happy to see that some of those numbers went down, and also interested in as to the responses, the demographic responses and test scores and things like that, and who some of it was transparent, but I'm still curious as to what demographics are being served in what way. Also, the importance of mental health at school, it's really crucial to have mental health providers who also understand the diverse experiences of student populations too, like your LGBTQI plus student population, multi-ethnic student population, and your students with disabilities as well. And when you're meeting like the needs of students with disabilities, it goes hand in hand with working on the mental health aspect, because if a student with disabilities needs are not being met, there's a high likelihood that's going to impact their mental health. And also if they fall through the cracks and, and it continues to go on, that can lead down to, other issues like chronic absenteeism, substance abuse. And this is true for multi-ethnic students as well as LGBTQI plus students who are high impacted at a greater rate for that reason. And so having mental health therapists who understand their experiences, especially when they're documenting, that they understand that it's through the lens of a person who is TQIA plus identifying, their experiences, to not get confused about it. And so, we do have some really great mental health therapists, but I think that it's important to do more outreach in the community, which is why I liked, pulling from the local university and other organizations that have that have a more broad perspective of those experiences. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much for the comments. Anyone else online or in person? Not now. I will go back to Trustee Wax, and then I'll go around this way myself. Clerk McNary and Trustee Shamas last.
This is the first LCAP plan, is that right?
This is year one of a 3-year plan.
Okay, but were there prior? Okay.
Oh, yeah, there's been LCAP since about 2015 when they adopted the local control funding formula.
So I guess my question is it possible in the next update or anything to see longer trends because of our small population when your jumps or discrepancies might be just a few kids? So it'd be nice maybe in the future or next year to see like a 3-year trend or something to see if the trend line is consistently going up or down, meeting goals. And then I know that there's an end goal for the 3rd year. Were there mid-year or mid LCAP plan goals too? Or like this year?
No.
No, okay.
And if you want the longer trend, I mean, some of the longer trend data is available just publicly. For example, a lot of the data that we pulled was from the California dashboard. And so in a lot of those areas, you're going to see, you can go pretty far back.
Yeah. And then this is not applicable to everything, but on some of the answers when we're kind of looking for, like what's coming to mind is the do you have a trusted adult at the school? Do we have any like follow-up questions or more anecdotal evidence or feedback about who that person is, how that relationship came to be? Because maybe like that's an area to devote more resources to, like if it is a school aide or something, and a prevalence of.
So that's a good question. The California, that particular question comes from the California Healthy Kids Survey, which is a standardized assessment. So it doesn't really offer that qualitative data that gets at the why question. And that's why we go into student advisory committees and we do interviews. So we gather that qualitative data to try to support and try to get at some of the stories behind, as when you're looking at quantitative data, it's answering the question, what?
Yeah.
This is the state. The why is really through the qualitative stories that you hear and through the interviews and focus group input.
Okay. And then also, I appreciate just all your getting back on some questions.
Oh, absolutely.
And thanks for
thank you. Good questions. In fact, you were able to catch a couple data entry errors. I really just appreciate when somebody sees it in that level of detail. That it's an honor because you're looking at it that closely. I appreciate that.
I'll just wait. Yeah, I'm going next. I was really excited to see these numbers almost entirely increasing across the board. I hope with some of the belonging, particularly with racial breakdowns, we've made some progress given the effort we've put into that. Really love the way you presented with the red arrow and gold stars. You made it really easy to follow. Very clear, good lesson. And I know this was mentioned even by myself on a previous item, but again, the comments here, I cannot reiterate enough how important it is for this LCAP goal number 2 to figure out how, again, with the numbers to support our mental health and counseling needs. It's, and I might bring up, I don't know if it's necessary to bring up at a future agenda item potentially, but just again, highlighting that point that we need to make sure that we're not, when we're doing what we need to do for the budget, we're not doing, something that's going to create harm in our district. So we just need to have a committee, have a group in place that can help us make sure that's the case. So anyway, sorry to keep harping on that, but it's obviously critically important.
No, it absolutely is. I mean, it speaks to the belongingness feeling, right?
Exactly.
And safety, because we're talking about psychological safety, not just, physical safety.
Exactly. So yeah, thank you for putting this together. I look forward to seeing the full picture at our next LCAP presentation. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the very clear and concise presentation.
Thank you.
I really appreciated how it was separated out from all the data so we could have a summary. So thank you for that. I don't really have any questions, and I do appreciate the information. And I think one thing I'm looking forward to is if we keep numbers on how many people participate community-wise in our upcoming community input forums and surveys, and just kind of looking at how those numbers shift from last year to this year and what that looks like. So thank you for all your work on this. I imagine this is like your full-time gig, right? Like it's LCAP season, we could say.
The fun February break.
Yeah. Thank you, though. It is appreciated, Dr. Hackworth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trustee Schmaltz.
Okay, so maybe I should wait until community input, but I'm going to give you my input now. Just a few things. When I'm looking at, I remember the A through G completion. And you probably remember this, Matt Bell was really big about, we need to hone in on that, concentrate on that, expand on it, which we have. And but now I think we're getting to a point, not personally PG school district, but I mean the whole country with the cost of colleges skyrocketing. What I think is going to happen is you're going to have less and less kids going.
Yeah.
And they're going to start looking for trainings and different kind of vocational opportunities that aren't going to cost thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I just think that's something we should keep in mind. We do have the CET, but the one thing I like to add to this is that I really like to see that we maybe start in middle school, but also through high school, that we do some kind of vocational survey, vocational inclination. We get kids start to be thinking about what are their talents, we can all remember that. I mean, there's always a kid or two in your class that knows they're going to be a doctor and knows they're going to be, the rest of us don't know. And we get to college and we still don't know. And so, and maybe we graduate from college and we don't know. So it's something that I think when we talk about mental health, if you already get affirmation about what talent you have, it's very motivating. And so I'd just like to throw that out there, that's something that we could add in somewhere.
I can speak to that a little bit. I think you're right on it. I think that we don't want to be one-dimensional as a program, right? And considering that not every student is going to be university bound, we do have, CTE, expanding CTE dual enrollment programs. We also have a program called California Colleges. We're in first year of implementation of California Colleges that our college and career technician at the high school is implementing, and it does have those career surveys and feedback on that. It's really, really cool. We're very excited about that. And Matthew Binder has done a ton of work doing the data transfer from our SIS into California colleges. Really, really cool stuff.
That's good. That's great. The next thing I wanted to talk about on the counseling services, it mentions in here that you use the toolbox at the elementary level, but I'm thinking that it should continue on, at least with maybe adjustments for age adjustments to the middle and the high school level, because those are, what we're teaching. I love the toolbox at the elementary level. I love how Mr. Rogaman really, great. It's so great.
The breathing tool.
Yeah. It's so impactful.
Yeah, I still use it. My daughters, they had it in elementary school, and I can't tell you how many times, Dad, you're having rock brain right now, you know?
Yeah, and I don't, I think that we shouldn't leave it at the elementary. We should expand upon it through and this can all come out through the mental health program, like looking at what kind of goals we want for that. Also, I'd say that, don't forget the aids, to add aids into where it says here, the elementary school counselors work collaboratively with classroom teachers. And it doesn't say the aides. So I just want to throw that in there, that the aides should be part of that, training. Then my second to last thing. Okay, on the mental health therapist at the high school. It says the therapist's intent is to help students develop skills and strategies for coping with anxiety, depression, trauma. And this is something that I've talked about before, but I believe that should be a class. That should be a class unto itself, instead of just putting it onto a therapist to deal with that. It should be taught as a class. And how, because these are what we deal with, right? And there's enough curriculum right there. So that's what I would encourage, that be taught as a class. And the last thing is the vector training. I am so opposed to that. I'm so sorry, but why are we putting PE teachers in charge of this? And then it's online. It just doesn't make sense to me. Again, it should be a class, and it should be something that is required before they graduate. All of that needs to be required. That's my final thought.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good comments to chew on there. Do we have a response to one of the items? Please. Principal Roach, yes.
Yes. Sean Roach, proud principal of Pacific Grove Middle School. I love what you said, Beth, and we actually have several curricula that we use at the middle school. We use Open Parachute, which is a social emotional curricula that deals with how to deal with stress and anxiety, making good friendships, that kind of thing. And we have something called Character Strong. So being an upstander and showing good character and putting your best self out there. We have a dedicated time every Monday for advisory class. So we do have a class that teaches those kind of things as well. And we also have an amazing group of teachers who write advisory curricula. They were actually off yesterday. We've been doing about a 7-part series on the evils of cell phones. And it is a wonderful thing. And it really ties into our last anti-bullying meeting, which was cyberbullying. So we're kind of trying to connect the dots there as well. I'm well familiar with the toolbox of being married to an elementary counselor. And I have rock brain too. So that's at least what I've been told. But I think it's absolutely vital and absolutely important to carry that forth, all the way through high school as well. So I would love it if you popped in sometime for one of the lessons. It'd be great.
Would love to. And I know that you are doing a lot of those things. I guess my point is that I would want to make it so that there's a streamline, so that you're not right, that what you're doing is not just over here in the middle school, but that it connects up to elementary and then connects up to the high school.
We're looking at that alignment, right? Across the board. So we've got something that continues all the way through. Yeah. Well said.
It's a good thought. Sorry, that'll come back to you, Trustee, but it's a good thought in the continuity. I mean, being at the middle school, you have a unique role between the two. So I think there's, again, some reason for, or not reason for, but opportunity for leadership that's unique in our district. The other one I'll say is I think there's opportunities at the high school too, where we can look for, thinking of times when there might be a sub in a class that may have very short instructional need, and there might be opportunities to take advantage of that, or things like the previous independent studies, options or free periods. There might be ways to have, and even the club program might be another one to, really consider. I know it's student run, but just to look for these opportunities to create that continuity, because it's easy to forget your lessons and your breathing tool when you get to high school and you have to take 7, finals right before midterm or whatever. So
Very true.
yeah, rock brain, like it. Okay.
Along with continuity, I think also frequency is important, and maybe like highlighting the resources of the MHTs at the campus. I don't know if this is already being done, but I'm envisioning like on morning announcements, maybe one day a week or something, if there's like a tip from one of the MHTs about how to deal with stress, or some executive functioning skill, to kind of for them to address everyone at a school site in one fell swoop. And then this is probably like a future talk thing, but when Trustee Shamas was talking about getting kids interested earlier in vocations, I was thinking about this last month. I think it would be cool if like some of the directors or some of the staff did basically on-site field trips, like, not to sign you up, Mr. Silvera, but like if you did like a kitchen field trip and showed kids, or if Mr. Anderson like taught some people to hammer heavy things or whatever. I think like broadening the scope of the world, even though it's still on site, is really important, because I think a lot of the learning is obviously in the classroom, but I think it's important to get across that learning is everywhere, and our amazing staff uses all these different skills in different ways. That's not really to you. That's just kind of.
I think it's a great idea.
But sorry, pulling that thread a little bit, I think of like, if you want to talk about learning how to like balance a budget or stuff, look at, food services and how to feed kids for a certain amount, right? That's a great.
I also know that you guys aren't busy at all. So like
another thing. For the record, there was sarcasm in that comment for anyone.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks. I'm just right there. Okay, with that, I do want to note it's 9:50. We have, I think, 2 more quick items ish. One might be a little long. So do we want to make a motion just to extend a little longer to be safe, or do you think we can make it through in 10 minutes? Okay. Yeah, I'll go ahead and make a motion to extend the meeting to 10:15.
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 4-0. So 10:15, we have to let everybody go. So, okay. Thank you again, Dr. Harkless. We're on to item C, the CSBA board policy updates. Did you want to? Yeah, that's a please.
Right. So yes, this is our first read of the current updates to our CSBA policies. And for those who aren't aware of the process we follow, we have a policy committee which comprises members of our district office, our directors and cabinet members, and then we actually have 2 trustees who serve on that committee. And this year we're honored to have Trustee Otmar and Trustee Trustee Shamas, who have signed up for that role. And we had that chance to meet just a few weeks back to really take a close review of the policies that CSBA is recommending that are up for renewal. And often, those revisions are as a result of new legislation. So it's a wonderful process, because what it really just means is that we're in this constant sort of continued program improval when it comes to our policies, to ensure that they're constantly being updated and current and reflect current legislation, so that legally we're in compliance. There is quite a list, as you can see. There's a nice summary there. Multiple policies, and in each case the director in charge of that that particular department is listed. But really, I just want to open it up to the board at this time for discussion. I am so grateful to Trustee Otmar and Trustee Shamars for their input. When we meet as a committee, that really what results is just wonderful, rich discussion. Trustee McNary knows because she served on that last year. But it really is, in my opinion, such an effective approach, very collaborative and inclusive, that really ensures, we're taking care of business right across all of our departments and serving our students. So any questions, input at this time, please?
Public comment first on this item, which is item C. None in the audience. We'll go to board. I'll just comment quickly. The two things I wanted to mention. One, I think we still have state policy on cell phones coming forward in March. Is that right? Isn't that the plan? There was going to be like some state that's on the, like, not from the policy committee, but the policy committee will get some state suggested language.
I believe March was the time on that, so we'll be keeping an eye on it if that does come forward.
The other one I just wanted to bring up that I know we had talked about was the idea of setting a board goal. Maybe this would be for governance meeting with the policy for reserve target.
And I think we have that on the future agenda items for June. I think we kind of put that on for the summer to identify that. Absolutely. Yes, indeed.
All my concerns met. Thank you guys on the policy committee, one and all, for the detailed additions. No one else jumping to the mic? I will go ahead and.
Well, it's a lot.
Okay,
it's a lot here. But I would just encourage people to maybe pick and choose. Like here's a policy on chronic absence and truancy. Definition of it. Here's one on expulsion and suspensions, what they are, what they can do, what they can't do. So, there are things in here that are important to know, but this is a lot to go through. Pick your favorites.
I thank you and Trustee Otmar for being on this board.
There's a lot of trust there, I can tell.
Okay. With that, I think we have any direction. Anyone disagree we should bring it back for final approval? Saw that, Trustee Clerk. You knew where I was going. It was good. Okay, last item, but not least, future agenda items. So public comment, is there any folks that would like to, I guess, do you have a recommendation to bring up first? Nope, okay.
I do not, no.
Okay, so public comment on future agenda items? If not, any board member in the room, I think we've brought up a few items that kind of circle around it. I don't think I need to bring them back up here, so. Thank you so much. With that, we're going to end before 10 o'clock. So as we say in the government right now, you can have 20 minutes back in your day or your night. Thank you all very much.